Hello. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Table Talk with the Knights of Last Call. I am your host, Derek Melenda, here this week for one day only, because Thursday I was supposed to be at Gen Con, but instead I'm going to Vegas. I have echo. Damn it. All right. I keep forgetting to do that. No, it was not. It was the return of the echo. It's an OBS thing. So anyways, welcome. So anyways, thank you for for covering me that. You figured it was for effect. All right, I'll go for that. I actually have I bought like a voice changing app thing, and I never actually ended up really using it, but I should try to use it. Henry, I don't know why you just got that deleted by the stream elements. I'm gonna have to do something. All right, we got a bunch of stuff coming in here. Hold on a sec. Sheesh. Let's see here. All right. Well, we got a membership. Damien re-upped for 4 months. Said, make sure you get to my favorite level 20 psychic feat. Way to waste my free super chat. Oh, well, appreciate it. Wait, how do you get free super chats? I don't even know. Apparently, yeah, by being a cool dude, which Damien is, and you are not. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to fix this here. Hold on a sec here. There we go. There's Derek. Hey, there we go. Okay, I want to be below the chat. Let me shrink this down a little bit there. There we go. Oh, okay. Every time your membership renews, you get one. Renew membership, you say? Well, that's right. Henry, Self-Confessed Cynic, Galarian in Depth, Stephen Palmer, and of course, Mr. Damian Williams, all are members of the Knights of Last Call YouTube group, which are called Adventurers. It's a special vanity tier just for people who really like emojis. But if you are interested in checking it out, you can click that join link below. Or you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call, where we have lots of cool stuff. And, well, lots of cool stuff. All right, well, we are here today to talk about Dark Archive. Root emojis? Oh, absolutely, Steven. Once I'll probably swap some out here once the root game starts up, for sure. Absolutely. So yeah, so Dark Archive was a playtest book that came out, I want to say, oh gee, it feels like forever ago. And it's the only time in the channel's history that we actually did some reviews, and I did them on the playtests. And if you haven't seen those videos and you're watching this on the VOD, I recommend go ahead and go and check those out. Interestingly, curiously, they are also the only videos that we've ever done that I scripted. So if you want to see what me like talking to a camera by reading a script looks like, you go look at our the review videos of Psychic and of Thaumaturge. And I thought the Thaumaturge was pretty interesting. I thought it had a lot of cool mechanical abilities that were going to be fun to interact and play with. I thought that it had a lot of interesting versatility and different builds that you could do with it by the various implements. And I thought the Psychic sucked. So that was my playtest. And that was my sort of results of the playtest. And today we are here. Last week, the actual Dark Archive book came out. And we're here to take a look. We're here to review it. I'm going to talk. I'm not going to cover every single feat and every single spell. We're not really going to do that. But my goal is to sort of get an impression, talk about features and abilities and things that I do like, and things that I don't like. Couple of things. If you want my specific opinion on something specifically, I'm going to have to ask you for you to throw it in a super chat or throw it in a Stream Elements tip. You can find the Stream Elements link below in the description, or you can type !tip to bring up our Stream Elements tip, and I will do my best to answer your question right away. And if we reach $50 in tips tonight, then I will commit to giving a tier ranking to the 2 classes that we're going to talk about tonight. Other than that, it'll just be like a high level. Now, here's the key. I have not read this book. Bob got a PDF for free. Thank you, Paizo. And he linked it to our Knights of Last Call Google Drive that we use for Knights of Last Call Business. And I've got it pulled up here in my PDF viewer. And this is going to be my first time actually looking at the book. So this is going to be first time impressions all around. Right. All right. Let me get everything here set up. There we go. All right. All right. Here we go. Live review. Yes, says so right on the tin. All right. Well, we start off here with some pretty good Wayne Reynolds art. I can't fault them for that. I am a fan of Wayne Reynolds art. I don't necessarily, we're already going to get so off point here, but I think I would prefer a cleaner, more consistent layout across all the books, but I guess at this point, we have what we have. All right, so Dark Archive. Okay, we've got a couple of pages, probably of fluff, and then we've got Psychic class, which is going to take up 22 pages, Thaumaturge class, which takes up 18 pages, and Psychic archetype and Thaumaturge archetype. And then we've got Self-Confessed Cynic coming in with a super chat already. What is with the enormous borders? I'm assuming you're talking about the gutter here. I'm on page 2, so I can't really say that much about it yet, but we'll get to there in a second. This is just the table of contents, Vin. Give me a second here. Okay, then we've got something called the Stolen Case Files, and this is already sort of making me raise my eyebrow. Okay. Some creature aftermath feats, adjustments, kind of more like we saw that in Book of Dead. We never did do our review on Book of the Dead, but I like Book of the Dead, at least in theory. Looks like very similar to Book of the Dead in that respect. Some stuff about secret societies looks pretty small. And some heritage, some incident reports, which we'll see what those are. And the cults section. So I will say that this table of contents is very confusing. I'm like, what are these? I don't even know. It doesn't really tell me. So I see people in the chat are complaining about the layout, but I could say that this table of contents itself is very confusing. We got stuff on curses and pacts, temporal anomalies, mindscapes, and then finally an index. So this looks to me like, I've often said this, that Paizo, Pathfinder 2, has this obsession with sort of weird Victorian era sort of mysteries and hoobly-doo. This sort of seems like the X-Files for Pathfinder 2, based off of, all of these different, incident reports and temporal anomalies and mindscapes. Again, it just seems like it's something like that. All right, some more art. Looks fine. All right, here we go. Introduction. This seems like this is something in, let's see, Dark Archives. All right, paranormal stuff. Okay, whatever. All right, here we go. The Archivist's Training Manual. The borders don't seem that much more thick than what I'm used to. All right. Okay. Maybe they are a little thick. That's a lot of gutter. That is a lot of gutter on the left and right sides of the pages. Okay. That's a lot of okay. That's a thick border. That's probably overly thick. All right. Let's get into it then with the let's get into this with the psychic. All right. All right, psychic. Key ability. We've got well, let's take a look first at the chassis. I think that's the best way to start off it. We see intelligence or charisma, which is interesting. I want to say that the playtest was the same way. We've seen caster. We've seen like a fighter can be strength or dex, but I don't know that we have seen a caster that has had the ability to be different key ability types. So that is interesting. Hit points 6+ con, so looking like they are a caster type. Train in perception, train in fort, ref, will, all the basics, you know, the usual. Skills kind of low, probably expecting to be base boosted by intelligence, but potentially not because you might be a charisma. Attacks simple, defenses simple, trained. And then let's just take a look here. I'm going to skip through all this. We're just thinking about the, you know, process of you know, kind of going through it here. No feat at first level. Okay, so just like a caster. And we get some abilities here as we go up through the day. 2 spells per day. Okay, interesting. Up to 10th at the same progression. I can live with that. Again, we'll get into like the conscious mind, the psyches, the amping, and all that other stuff. I just kind of want to take a look here at the core chassis. Okay, so they are trained in fort and reflex, expert in will. They get a signature spell ability, so they are spontaneous. They get skill increases, just like everybody else. Ability boost. Okay, here we go. So you don't look like you get your first class ability really until 5th level. You get the clarity of focus. You automatically increase the number of focus points in your focus pool by 1. This doesn't change the number of focus points you regain when you refocus. Again, we'll get back to that. But as I recall, they started with 2 focus points in their focus pool. So that seems okay. At 5th level, you also get reflex to expert. All right, 7 expert spellcaster. Again, nothing unusual there. And at 9th level, you are expert. At 11th, you get perception to expert. At 11th, you also get master will, along with the juggernaut upgrade ability. At weapon expertise at 11, because that matters. You also get your unarmored defense at 13. Okay, weapon specialization, which is always funny to me. Master at 15, and I'm assuming you get a 10th level at 8, 9, and then a 19 legendary. Okay, so very boring, very straightforward, just the basic caster shell. So fundamentally, from a feature perspective, there is nothing going on here that is different than a caster. So we really have to, really it's going to come down to how good are these abilities that we get at level 1 at making this feel different than a standard spellcaster. Rivo, but are there finally rules for magic tattoos? Fingers crossed. We'll have to check that out. All right. There we go. Chat was a bit covered. Thank you, Lollipop. Rivo, I don't know. We'll see. Like so many things in Pathfinder 2, sometimes things get published and then they never get published again. Blue Moon God is saying no tattoos, only in the Grand Bazaar. Sad. Can I make my cam smaller? Yes, I can. Hey, what's up? That's me too. All right. All right. So let's get into this. Now, already we can see here they have fewer spells. Now, at least they're getting spells every level. So that's something. It's not like the Summoner or the Magus. But the fact that we are getting only 2 suggests that we are going to be casting a lot of cantrips. That being said, one thing I do want to kind of point out is that I really consider a class like the feats and all that other stuff really like levels 1 through 10 and really levels 1 through 5, because anything higher than level 10, number one, even if your campaign does go to 20, it's going to make that much less of an impact over the course of the game, because you're only going to be using it for 50% or 25% of the game as you get into the 10 or 15th level. And secondly, most importantly, most campaigns just don't even get that high. Hell, Paizo is now making adventure paths that don't even get past 10th level. So I think that's something important to mention. Spell slots are weird. At high level, I almost feel like you have too many of them, and you don't need all these spell slots. At low level, you have too few, and you should need more of them. So, but apparently you want to be casting cantrips. All right, here we go. Ancestries, features, initial proficiency, psychic spell casting. All right, you cast occult spells. Yep, using the cast a spell activity. And instead of speaking, you substitute any verbal components with a special mental component. So kind of like the sorcerer, but instead of substituting material for somatic, you're substituting verbal for a mental component. So that's pretty cool. And you could substitute material components with somatic components. And of course, it's, it still has to be very clear and everything like that. But, okay, that's a cool flavor win. And you increase this, and you increase this, and you get a spell DC, and you can heighten them by using spell slots, of course, and you have to take them, and you get cantrips, which auto-heighten, and you get a spell repertoire. So very similar at this point to, let's say, an occult sorcerer, because you're a spontaneous, charisma, or int, potentially, based caster. And it's interesting because both charisma and int are kind of weak, because neither of them boosts anything like a save or your armor class or anything like that, but it is something to be noted. Obviously int gives you spells, or skills, but all right, swapping spells. Okay, psi cantrips, we get to the heart of it. The magic of your mind and manifests as psi cantrips, which you can modify by spending focus points. Like other cantrips, you can cast psi cantrips as often as you want. They're automatically heightened to your level rounded up. Your psi cantrips are an addition to the cantrips you choose from the occult list as part of your psychic spellcasting. Generally, only feats can give you more psi cantrips. Unlike other cantrips, you can't swap out psi cantrips gained from psychic feats at a later level unless you swap out the specific feat that does so. Okay, so got it. Okay, so you can have you get extra cantrips, and you can get even more cantrips on top of that. So you get your basic occult cantrips, in which case it's 3, and then whichever sort of discipline you choose is going to give you 3 additional cantrips, one of which is specific to your subtype or your subclass. Okay, this seems still so far similar to the playtest. So even from a high level perspective, you're not going to be casting a lot of spells, and you're going to be casting a lot of these cantrips, and you're going to be using your focus points to amplify them and make them into better spells. Now, I myself, feel like focus spells are kind of disappointing in the game. There's a couple of good ones, but for the most part, I feel like they're pretty disappointing because the power level on them is so slow because of the fact that they can be repeatedly cast. So we'll see about this. You start with a focus pool of 2. Okay, so that's just like the playtest. However, unlike most spellcasters, you don't gain focus spells that cost focus points. Instead, you only use your focus points to boost or modify your psi cantrips by applying your amps. Okay, so no focus spells, only cantrips, which get amplified into a better version of the cantrip. And that's only with the psychic cantrips. So your regular 3 occult cantrips are just like what you would normally get. But these 3 psychic cantrips, more if you take feats, could be amplified. So your focus points can only be used on those 3 things. One of which you don't get to pick because it's tied to your conscious mind. Okay. You refill by 10 minutes. Yep, same thing as normal. Okay. So, at least they're giving you 2. So what does this mean? So, your standard fight, you don't have a lot of spell slots. You have half of what a sorcerer has. And you have 2 focus points. Presumably, you're going to want to use them every fight or every encounter if you can, because that's your resources. And you don't have a lot of spell slots anyway, so in some cases, you're going to have to rely on those. Those focus points can only be used to amplify your 3 cantrips. So you're going to be casting 2 of those 3 cantrips a lot. Like a lot. So hopefully those are really fun. So that's pretty interesting. You can see here, by the way, the awkwardness that comes into the game because of both Paizo's Razor and because of their not thinking about trying to use too many mechanics to do too many things. So, for example, I think it's cool that they get 2 focus points. You know, we've seen the Cloistered Cleric starts with a domain focus, and they start with a focus point. The Sorcerer starts with a focus point. So those 2 classes are cool in that way. Here, this class starts with 2, and their refocus gives them back 2, which is fine. But then you get to this awkward point, which is if you've spent focus points. And again, I mean, from a game mechanic perspective, focus points are not only a fun resource because they're renewable, but it's also something that you just don't have to keep focus on. You don't have to focus on your focus points, right? But now you do, because if you've spent focus points only to amp psych cantrip or fuel psychic abilities, you regain 2, up to your maximum of 2. But if you've spent focus points on focus spells or abilities other than those from a psychic class, because remember, you get 1 focus pool. So if you are a charisma psychic and you end up picking up a champion and you end up picking up lay on hands, now suddenly you have 1 pool of focus points, but not really. So if you've spent focus points on focus spells or abilities other than those from the psychic class, for example, to cast a focus spell you gain from an archetype, you regain only 1 focus point. For how long? For forever? For the rest of the day? So if I archetype into something with focus points and I use that ability once, I am halved on my focus points forever for until I take a full sleep. Like, that's not only is that awkward, and not only is that like painfully shitty, it's just annoying. It's just annoying. All right. Unleash Psyche is next. This was the sort of thing where Paizo was trying to think about progression in a fight. They were trying to think about momentum. They were trying to think about escalation, because they understood that if they gave someone a cool ability at the first round of the fight, you would just use it in the first round of the fight every time. You basically see this currently, right? Where you lead off with your best spells. Monsters lead off with their best spells on the first round of the combat. I should note that when I ran Abomination Vaults, by the way, Damien, when I ran Abomination Vaults, I created my own special reservoir of powers and abilities that the PCs could gain that were tied to the Gauntlet, and tied to the energies of Abomination Vault. And it was separate. It was a spirit pool, separate from your focus pool. And I just used that. So, I mean, I just think that could be done. All right, so unleashing your psyche, the trigger begins. Requirement, you're in an encounter. I mean, at this point, they are... just, they've just given up on any sort of simulation requirement here. They're just saying, you're in an encounter. You can't do this. You have to have cast a spell on your previous turn, and you aren't stupefied. Okay, so basically, round 2. You can't do it on round 1. You cast a spell on your previous turn. What if I cast a spell right before I went into combat? Does that count? Probably not. It's just, you know, this is very gamist language. And I, by the way, don't have a problem with gamist language, but it really starts to show that Pathfinder 2 is kind of stuck in this in-between spot between wanting to be a full game and wanting to cling to some of the simulationist roots. But all right. You unleash your psyche. It does for 2 rounds or until you fall unconscious, whichever comes first. So you do this on round 2 and you get it for rounds 2 and 3. And I mean, presumably you are going to be doing this a lot. Not only that, this really prices you in to casting a spell on the first turn. Not that most casters wouldn't cast a spell on the first turn. But if you don't cast a spell on the first turn of combat, you're at a pretty significant disadvantage because you won't be able to unleash your psyche. So you are constantly surrounded by visual manifestations. People know that you're in this stance. When you cast a damaging spell, you get a status bonus to its damage equal to double the spell's level. It's pretty substantial. So this is the Psychic is the Rage Mage. Psychic is the Rage Mage. It doesn't only applies to durations that have instant. You can use actions that have the Psyche trait. Oh, maybe ordinarily you can't. Interesting. After you've unleashed your Psyche subsides, your mind must recover from the strain. You can't use Unleash Psyche again for 2 rounds, and you become stupefied for 2 rounds. So, yeah, I mean, this is the spellcaster equivalent of Rage. It has a couple extra triggers that you have to set up, but it's very similar in kind of a thought and appeal. And it kind of has the same kind of style. I do remember, we'll get into this here. Let me see if I can see here, but the earlier ones were pretty brutal. Why is it on page 15? Okay. You have a subconscious mind. This is like your yeah, well, okay, a couple things. You know, at least rage doesn't cost an action. Well, okay, but see what's happening here, GM Scott, is I think they're learning, right? I think they know, as I believe, that the action cost of the rage is too much. It's not, and it's not interesting, right? It's not interesting. It doesn't ask anything of the barbarian. It doesn't ask anything of them. All it asks for them to do is to just, you know, to rage. Like, there's nothing in this that, like, maybe like the barbarian has to take damage or they have to score a critical hit. And I know you're like, oh, the barbarian wouldn't even work then. And then it's like, oh, and if you do that, then as a free action, you can enter into rage. Yes, okay, but it's asking you to figure out a plan and maybe to do something a little bit more involved, which is what this Unleashed Psyche ability does. Regardless of how you feel about the power of this, I think this Unleashed Psyche ability is far more interesting than Rage, because at least it's saying, hey, if you jump through these hoops, and they're not a lot, then at least you get to unleash your psyche. I think we're overrating this you being stupefied. 1 for 2 rounds. Turn 1, you do this. Turn 2, turn 3, you're unleashing your psyche, and then it ends. Again, and I've said this before, most battles are going to be fairly well decided by that 3rd round. Yes, I mean, there's going to be ones that are going to go to round 4, round 5, and this will be a real cost. And I don't hate this, actually. I think it's kind of an interesting ability. All right, so you get a subtype, your subconscious mind. This basically determines how you use it and things, and then you have to choose it on page 15. The following options are presented in the book. We have emotional acceptance, which is charisma. We have wandering reverie, which is charisma. We have gathered lore and precise discipline, which are both intelligence. Okay, so we've got 2 int builds, 2 charisma builds. This is your subconscious mind, which is on page 15. So I guess we'll go there first. Okay, that chooses your key ability. You get a psyche action. This is a unique ability that you can only use while your psyche is unleashed. Okay. Again, probably creating fairly repetitive play patterns, though, right? Because round 1, you're going to cast a spell. Round 2, you're going to unleash. And then because you can unleash and you can only use your psyche action while you're unleashed, you're probably going to use your psyche ability. And then you have 2 actions left. So then you're probably going to cast another spell. You know, there's a certain amount of these actions you're paying for by even just having the class. And so you start to get priced into doing these actions. I mean, it remains to be seen how powerful they are. So let's take a look at the charisma ones first. You get emotional acceptance. You get charisma and you get restore the mind. Single action, emotion, enchantment, healing, mental, psyche. Oh, wait, we're not doing a spell stream. Okay, your unleashed psyche gives closer feelings to your allies. Choose one of the 2 benefits to grant to one ally within 30 feet, and then you can't do them again for 10 minutes. They get +1 status bonus to saving throws. They regain hit points equal to 2 plus double your level. So 1 action, 4-point heal. So fundamentally, a level 1 action heal does D8 at touch. So this is, which is an average of 4.5 damage. This is doing 4 points of healing at level 1, and it's ranged, and you're getting it for free. This is not bad. So if you were level, let's say 5, you would be healing them for 12. So at level 5, a cleric would have 3d8 with a single action heal spell. And 3d8 on average is like 13. And this is doing, was it 12? Yeah, I mean, this is pretty good. I think the first ability is kind of crappy. But I think the first one's pretty good. You know, you'll be basically able to throw out a free heal to each of your allies. Again, this is balanced because the game doesn't let you do this outside of an encounter mode. By the way, just a warning alert. I don't know if this has already happened, but things like this are part of the reason why people rose up and hated 4th edition so much. Because, and this is what led to stupid things in 4th edition, like attacking a rat outside of combat. Because a character, like in 4th edition, like a cleric, might get a power where they can attack somebody, and then if they hit that person, or if they, whether they hit or miss, they make a swing, they get to roll attack roll, they get to do damage, and they get to heal their ally. And so people would say, why can't I do that when it's not combat? What do you mean? Like I can heal people forever as long as it's not in combat? Like, or only if when I'm in combat? And they're like, okay, what if I go and I attack this rat? Is that an attack now? Can't I heal my ally? And so like 4th edition had this problem because it said, look, we want these abilities to be fun and flavorful, but they quote unquote break the moment we take them outside of combat. And something like this restore the mind ability is dabbling in that space. It's dabbling in that same space because suddenly you get to this weird thing where you're like, I can only restore their minds when we are in initiative order. Why is that? Well, because your psyche is unleashed. Why do I have to be in encounter mode to unleash my psyche? Oh, because it's only when you're really hyped up and you're really excited. There's a lot of ways to be hyped up and excited that have nothing to do with being an encounter. So I'm just pointing out that while this may work, it's a dangerous ground. So we'll just leave it at that. All right, so that's our charisma one, or one of the charisma ones. We also have gathered lore. This is an intelligence-based one. And by the way, just from a certain perspective, charisma is going to obviously help you with a couple skills. Your diplomacy, your deception. Intelligence is going to help you with all your lores, quite a few of your knowledge-based skills. And of course, it's going to give you more skills training. On a fundamental basis, I would say that int is probably a better stat than charisma. So there is something to be considered about that as well. All right, gathered lore is our next one. You get intelligence and you get recall the teachings. All right. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. All right, one action, and again, you can only do this. It's a psychic ability. You can only do this while you're in your unleashed. The heightened power of your psyche lets you recall every lesson you've ever learned. You search your mind for the right teaching. When it first seems cryptic, comes into clarity when it's most real. Okay. Until the start of your next turn, you count as having prepared to aid all allies within 30 feet of you. If you use the aid reaction to help one of them during that time, you roll an occultism check for aid as you recall a lesson to them. Oops. This is how I do aid already. Hey, Vin tip $5.
Vin tip $5. Not only is encounter mode only dangerous GNS ground, I think my problem with it is that it's inelegant. They could likely have restructured their focus point users to account for this.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. It's a dangerous GNS ground where you start to blur the line between simulationist gameplay, which is kind of the bedrock of D20 fantasy, or it has been aside from 4th edition. But it is kind of clunky, and it's going to create moments at your table where everyone's going to kind of look around and say, that doesn't feel right, even if it does maybe seem balanced. Okay, well, Recall the Teachings is interesting. I think it's a cool ability, but, again, I kind of let people do this with aid anyways. Obviously, my version of aid where you can just prepare to aid is a little bit more powerful than the standard written language. It's kind of vague, but, you get to use your occultism. It's 1 action. It's 30 feet. You can always use occultism. I think this is an all right power. It's not the most exciting. I think this is way more powerful. All right. Precise Discipline is next. This is another int one, and you can calculate threats. You spend 1 action, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to AC and reflex, so you raise a shield. But you get it to reflex as well. Couldn't you just raise a shield? Wouldn't that kind of do the same thing? Yeah, I guess you wouldn't get it to reflex. Self-Confessed Cynic makes a good point too. It's a pretty cool ability, but it's still limited to your reaction. And if you have anything else that you're doing with your reaction, then that's kind of shitty. So yeah, Calculate Threats seems fine, but I could just have a shield. But especially since I don't need material components. Well, the shield cantrip is only 1 AC, GM Scott. This is 2, just like a real shield. But again, I could just have a real shield and be a caster. There is no shield proficiency in Pathfinder 2. I also am a big believer that not enough people use the take cover action, which clearly states that not only do you not have to be in cover, you could be not in cover. If you're near something that could give cover, then you gain cover. And cover does give you a bonus to reflex save. So unless you're standing in the middle of an open field or an empty room, most of the time you could just take cover, and that'll give you +2 to AC and +2 to your reflex saves anyways. All right. That one's the least impressive so far. All right. Wandering Reverie is next, and that is another charisma one, and you get Fade into Daydreams. 1 action, illusion. Your flights of imagination spill into the real world, causing you to become indistinct, hazy. You become concealed until the start of your next turn, and like a blur, you can't use this to hide. Okay. That's okay. I mean, DC 5 flat check, it's not nothing. But I mean, this first one here, this emotional acceptance is, I think, way better. I think this one's the best by far. So these don't seem like they are very balanced. All right. So that is our subconscious mind. So now we get our conscious mind. So I do like this combination. I am worried about what this means for feats. Again, one of the problems I had when I played a cleric is I'd get to like level, 16, and there'd be 4 feats, and 2 of them were for war priest, and 2 of them were for cloistered cleric. I wasn't a war priest, so it's okay, cloistered cleric. One of them was only if you were evil. One of them was if you weren't evil, and so I get to pick 1 feat out of 4. Damien, I can buy that. I don't know that int is that much more useful, that it should be that much more of a difference. All right, but your conscious mind, you get the distant grasp, the infinite eye, the oscillating wave, the silent whisper, yada, 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 my God. I think the first question is, do I even like this design? It feels like so much of your like character. I mean, I guess it's kind of like a sorcerer picking their bloodline, but all right. I'm just like, the fact that you have to do this twice, it just feels like you're kind of priced into these options. All right, so your conscious mind is very much like your sorcerer bloodline. Yep, it gives you your automatic spells. You get your psionic cantrips, which you don't get to pick. Okay, interesting. And then you get your unique one. So you get 3 from the occult list of your choosing, and then you get 3 from your conscious mind. 2, they're all chosen for you, but one of them is unique to this specific conscious mind. All right, we get some abilities here. These are all from the occult list. Mage hand, telekinetic projectile. Okay, so I guess we should start looking at these, huh? All right. Your mage hand could carry 1 bulk instead of light bulk. Who the fuck cares? This is stupid. Mage hand should already carry more than light bulk anyways. If the spell is heightened to 3rd level or higher, its maximum bulk is 2. Oh my god. I have to be 3rd level before I could pick up a flick mace, and only if I'm a psychic with the distant grasp ability. Think about... All right. 7th level, 3 bulk. Wow. Characters can fly at this level, but I could pick up 3 bulk with my mage hand. This is so pointless. All right, so this is horrible. Amp. You create a multitude of telekinetic hands that grip onto a creature and move it about. Target a creature of medium size or smaller with the amp spell instead of an object. You attempt to shove the target. Spell attack roll versus its fortitude DC. Well, that's not going to end well for you. And they get a -10 circumstance penalty to speeds until the spell ends. Okay. And then you only have to spend 1 round to keep shoving them. Well, this is pretty bad. 4, you can attempt to disarm, so even worse. Okay, so this is horrible. Okay, what else do you get? You get telekinetic projectile, which was already, it was basically the, if you wanted to do, physical damage type, which goes from 30 feet to 60 feet. Remember, this is what you're going to be spending the majority of your time doing. But you can amp it, and if you amp it, they get pushed 5 feet. Okay, so this is also horrible. The disarm steals their weapon. Wow. I still don't care. You got to critically hit to disarm them, and you're definitely not going to do that with anything else. So, Steven Feldman's here, Bob. He's asking for a Northern Reaches server reset. Get on it. Can't. He's not at his computer. Bob, can you try to get a hold of Mr. Smith? How is double range and double heightened damage on a telekinetic projectile horrible? It is horrible because that was already a fairly disappointing spell. Can telekinetic projectile going from 30 feet to 60 feet is not going to fundamentally change the way that the game functions for you. You're still going to be stuck doing a substandard option, and it's, there's, it's already a very disappointing cantrip. I would still rather cast Electric Arc than an amplified heightened telekinetic projectile. So, and that's supposed to be like what my character does and does well. I mean, if you gave me the choice between this telekinetic projectile and Electric Arc, I would take Electric Arc. Okay, but Damien, that's pointless because we're not doing that. So, like, I mean, that, yeah, it would be cool, but that's not the way that the core game works. So we have to base it off of that. That's, I like Anthony. That's amazing. Yeah, I love it. Bob's like, I can't, I'm at family dinner. Meanwhile, he's in this chat. So what does that mean? Okay, telekinetic wrench. So this is the big thing. This is what you get. It's 2 actions, 60 feet, 2 non-overlapping 5-foot bursts. Okay, so that's a 4 squares by, that's a 2 square by 2 squares. So 4 squares, and you get 2 of those, and they can't overlap. Basic fort save, violent axis of motion, D6 bludgeoning or D6 slashing, basic fort save, and creature can only take damage once. And it heightens by +2 for D6. Your thoughts expand. It deals 1d6 bludgeoning and 1d6 slashing damage. A creature that critically fails is stunned 1. And if you amp it by +2, both increase by d6, and you add a third. Okay. This is good. This is much better. In fact, I don't know that you would ever even use this if you had this, and you have to have this. So, yeah. Telekinetic wrench's fine. And I guess what it comes down to is, well, the damage is a little bit low total entropy because it's a focus spell and because it's a cantrip. So part of the problem with this is you are paying a cost in these abilities, these focus point abilities. And the cost that you are paying is that these are a renewable resource. So they cannot be as powerful as, say, Fireball or Lightning Bolt or Cone of Cold. Okay? But the problem is, how often do your wizards or your sorcerers in your Pathfinder 2 game run out of spells? Maybe at like level 1, 2, or 3, but quite frankly, quite honestly, most of the time, people are going for a couple of encounters a day. That's it. And then they're resting. Once you get 12 or 14 or 15 spells a day, it's going to be pretty tough for you to run out of spells. And that means the fact that these, you're paying a cost. It's kind of like paying more for unlimited servings at the buffet, but at the same time, you know, the buffet closes in an hour. So is it really worth paying more money to get unlimited servings at the buffet? Even because you're not really going to be able to make the most use out of it, because the encounter day, the adventuring day is going to be over. So, I mean, I think telekinetic rend is fine. So, now, like I said, I'm not going to go through all these spells. I'm just going to go through the base ones. So, yeah, Total Entry says telekinetic rend at level 20 is basically a level 5 fireball. So you would have to cast what, like 20 spells before you would want to use it. Right, and I think that is the fundamental kind of problem that you're trying to face up against. This class is working on this resource of you're paying your less power for greater sustain. Well, sustain, like if I was playing in a game that was going 8+ encounters a day, 10+ encounters a day. Okay, well then, yeah, like this class starts to become a lot cooler because they're going to be able to keep unleashing many times a day. They're going to have these amps, these focus points, 2 and then 3 amps per fight after every fight. You know, after the first fight or two, when the sorcerer, the wizard, the witch, the cleric are out of maybe their highest level spells, their second highest level spells, their third highest level spells. The magus is completely out of spells. The summoner is completely out of spells, right? After 3 or 4 encounters, most of your standard, spontaneous, and prepared classes, to say nothing of the magus and to say nothing of the summoner, they're going to be out of basically their best spells. And the wizard and the sorcerer are going to be trading on their lower level spells. At lower levels, they may be straight out of spells after 4 encounters. And at higher levels, they might be down to, their level 2 and 3 spells when normally they're casting level 6 and level 7 spells. Yeah, and that's going to be rough. That's going to be a bad day for them, right? Their 4d6 fireball or whatever, or their 6d6 fireball is going to be really unimpressive when you're, level 11. And then this class would be awesome because you're going to keep going and you're going to say, hey, those first two encounters of the day, the first 3 encounters of the day, I was doing okay. I was holding my own. But the power of the mind, man, it's infinite. And I'm just going to keep producing. And as we get into the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th encounter of the day, me and the marshals over here, okay, who also can go all day, the barbarian who can rage every encounter, the ranger who can hunt prey infinite times per day, we are going to show you what's up because we have this sustain. But how many APs, how many home games does that even happen? I don't know that I've ever played a Pathfinder 2 session or multi-sessions that has gone that many encounters. So I think that is something that you have to consider when you consider these abilities. Okay, so that's the Distant Grasp. Blue Moon God. It's a great point. I mean, 100%. I mean, I'm not trying to say that. I'm heightening. I am judging the spell based off of that. The level of the component detail that it's doing. That is absolutely the case. But keep in mind that the first spell that you cast is not going to have that, and then the second and the third will, but then the 4th and the 5th won't, and you'll be stupefied. Like, it's not quite so derivative. I don't think the class is unbalanced. In fact, actually, I think it is a little weak in certain aspects, but fundamentally, I think the problem isn't one of balance. I think the problem is one of what does the play pattern of this spell look like? I already criticize certain classes in the game, Ranger being one of them, because so many of their abilities rely on them attacking their hunted prey that it almost forces them to have to hunt prey. Essentially, it does force them to hunt prey. And then everything has to key off of hunt prey. And then when you kill the monster, you have to hunt prey again. And you're just kind of forced into this sort of repetitive pattern. All right, Infinite Eye gets Detect Magic. Okay, this seems all right. Not something I'm really be excited for. All right, let's see if we can make Amp good. Guidance good. Okay, Guidance goes to 120. Okay, all right. That's not nothing. Amped Guidance doesn't cause a creature to become temporarily immune to Guidance, and they can be targeted by Amped Guidance even if they are temporarily immune to normal Guidance. And you can cast an Amped Guidance spell as a reaction triggered when your ally fails or critically fails an attack roll, perception check, saving throw, or skill check, and if the bonus from the Guidance. And if 6th level spell, it goes to +2. This is okay. This is okay. This is fun. You'll have fun with this. I think this is a fun way to have fun with Guidance. I mean, I don't know why you can't change a hit to a crit, but I think this is okay. Glimpse Weakness. The first ally gets 1 plus the spell level's damage, and then the spell ends. And if you amp it, it's 1d4 plus 1. And if you amp it +2 every 2, it's 2d4. Boothby says amped Guidance is how every player wants to use Guidance anyways. You failed. I cast Guidance. Personally, Boothby, this gets into like how games feel. I would like it if Guidance did do that anyways. I do think that feels more. I think that feels more cool. But amped guidance seems great. So, all right. So we've got a bunch of different stuff here. Again, like I said, I'm not going to do a full every spell, everything reviewed here. Psychic feats. All right. Again, I'm only going to really take a look at the first couple levels here. Damien did use his super chat to look at the 20th level one here. Ren coming in.
$5. The damage bonus sounds good on paper, but once Fireball etc. comes in, Derek is correct that these cantrips become outmoded on a normal adventuring day. You'd rather use those turns with a damage bonus on Fireball, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the damage bonus from unleashing your psyche lets you not completely be irrelevant. I should also note the fact that you get a damage bonus from unleashing your psyche. It kind of makes you feel badly for not using a damage spell. I should also point out that damage bonus only applies to single target, or not single target, but non-durational abilities. In other words, you can't like set up a damage over time that's going to keep doing that damage to them. So, you know, it's somewhat limited in that regard. But I also feel like now you unleash your psyche, and now you're like, well, now I want to cast my damaging spells because I get this damage bonus. And so you feel like pressured into just doing more damage, even if something else would be more fun to do. And sure, you could do something else. And I mean, making choices is fun and all, but it does feel bad to then like feel like you're missing out on what your unleashed psyche is giving you. I did not. Yeah. Hey, Chris, what's up? I did not cover an oscillating wave. I'm not covering every aspect of this, of the classes. I'm just sort of going over a high level review of them and seeing what we got here. All right. Feats. Hey, total entropy.
Total entropy tip $10. There are subconscious class feats at level 10.
There are subconscious class feats at level 10. Got it. Okay. So I'm okay with there being some feats which rely on you having a certain subconscious or conscious mind. I just don't like how like there are a lot of champion comes to mind. Monk maybe. No, maybe champion's probably the worst, where like a lot of the feats are like part of trees or, you know, whatever, where you kind of are priced out of these things. Okay, psychic feats. What do we got here? Counter thought. It's counter spell, but only for the mental trait. Yikes. Mental buffer. You gain resistance to mental damage. That comes up a lot. Equal to half your level. But it's your full level for the 2 rounds when your psyche is unleashed. This is a great example of a feat which is like really cool on paper and seems really awesome. And if your GM really plays this up and there's a lot of mental damage in your campaign, you're going to feel really cool for taking this. But if your GM is just using an adventure path or just using monsters out of the bestiaries, you're going to be really disappointed. And it's sad that it's that way because it feels like it should be really cool, but it just kind of ends up not being these. Psychic report. After you cast a spell with a mental trait, until the start of your next turn, you get +1 bonus to a couple of charisma-based skills. Not particularly exciting, but it is what it is. Keep in mind, double slice is a level 1 feat. Go figure. Okay. More expansions, cantrip expansions. We'll see this. Mental Balm. So this is an amp. This has the amp trait. Okay, this is interesting. Use this amp in place of a psi cantrip's normal amp entry. You can use this amp only on psi cantrips that target or affects you or one or more of your allies and doesn't target any enemies. Okay, so I cast my psychic guidance my psi guidance cantrip, and instead of amping it the way it normally works, I can amp it with mental balm. You or one ally within 30 feet gets a +2 status bonus to will saves against emotion effects for 1 minute. You can also have the amp psi cantrip attempt to counteract one effect imposing the frightened condition on yourself or the chosen ally, or an effect imposing the stupefied condition that has a duration of 1 hour left. If you successfully counteract the effect, you remove only the frightened or stupefied conditions, not any other part of the effect. Okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I like this. You can use mental balm to heal your own stupefied. Psyburst. Frequency once per round, 1 action. Violent energy. Target a creature within 30 feet. It takes D4 bludgeoning. And it trickles up. So you're talking about 2 points of damage at level 1. I get it's for free, but yeah. That is that's just way too low of damage. It's very cool. Like, again, it's one of those things that sounds really cool on paper. It just, I don't think it works out. I just don't think this is where you want to be. But I mean, I guess it's maybe good as like something else to do on your action, but it's so short range, and like the amount of mental processing that's going to take, like, okay, you got to roll a die, I got to make a reflex save, we got to look up your DC, we got to compare it, and then you're taking 2 damage or 3 damage. Oh, he saved 1 damage. It's just not worth the time. Yes, it's Eon Rider, correct. It's a 1 action magic missile minus the +1. All right. Yeah, except they get a save. Okay, here's the basically Bespell weapon feat, but in psychic mode. Bruned says it does have the mind shift, though. What is the right? Yes, and again, this is where traits, get us, because this has the psyche trait, which means you have to be unleashed. And you would think, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but don't you think the name of the trait should have been unleashed, not psyche? Mind shift allows damage to be converted to mental damage. Got it. All right. I mean, mostly flavor. It'll come up occasionally, but for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to complain about the versatility of that, but. You or one of the stars gains resistance to physical damage equal 2 plus the spell's level until the start of your turn. That's not bad. That's actually not bad. Free action. When you unleash your psyche, the force of your mind unleashing itself racks your enemies with a violent shockwave. 2d6 force to all creatures. Well, okay. See, look at that. Look at the racks your enemies with a violent shockwave. You deal 2d6 force damage to all creatures. So, which is it? I'm assuming it means all creatures, and that this is just flavor text. And then it stuns you. Great. So it totally took an action. And then the damage goes up to by 1d6 every. Wait, what? This is a level 4 feat. Okay, so 1 level later, it goes up to d6. That's because it's trying to like get onto the 5, 7, 9 thing. So at level 5, it's 3d6, and then it's 4d6 and stuff like that. I mean, that's okay. dun, dun. All right, once per hour, if you cast a psionic cantrip and you have 0 focus points, you add an amp that costs 1 focus point to the spell. Instead of paying the normal focus point points, you lose hit points equal to 4 times the spell level of the amp psi cantrip as you bleed through your nose. I actually love this feat. I think this is really awesome. This is exactly the kind of fun resource play that I love out of role-playing games. This is a digging deep. I mean, hit points are kind of the only resource that we have to really play with. I think this is very fun. I like that it's once per hour instead of once per day. Very fitting. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a cool feat. All right. Someone wanted me to look at the level 20 feats. Become thought. You shed some of your material form, becoming a being of pure thought. You gain resistance 10 to physical damage, but weakness 5 to mental damage, and weakness 10 to anything that damages the spirit. You can change your appearance on a whim, and once per year, when you die, you automatically return to life the next day as long as one living sentient creature on the plane remembers you. Honestly, probably kind of totally worth it. Resistance 10 to physical damage is not bad. I'll take the weakness 5 to mental damage. Andrew saying cranial detonation is the real one. Free action with the psyche and mind shift and the death once per round. You successfully reduce 1 or more non-mindless creatures to 0 hit points. Use your flickering consciousness to detonate psychic energy from their heads. So you pop their heads. Okay. Well, you still got to go to 18th level, huh? To get back your 3 refocus. Yikes. And I mean, I think you're pretty much, who cares? You're level 18 at that point. It doesn't even matter. Mind over matter. You get an extra 10th. Great. At level 20, when you unleash your psyche, you can double its duration. So basically, you get to do it for the whole fight. An unlimited potential. A concentration, manipulate meta magic, once per minute meta magic with 1 action. Of course, the laws of magic can limit what you mind. If your next action is to cast a spell of level 5th level or lower that has no duration, you don't expend the prepared spell as you cast it. Well, it's a good thing that the game is basically over, but that is cool. Obviously, it's only once a minute, but it's cool that I have, 20-something, 25 spell slots, but I can, unlimited potential needs errata. Chris, what are you thinking of? Why does it need errata? Oh, prepared spell. Good point. Okay. Yeah. That's true. They are prepared. All right. So that's the psychic. Interesting. The unleashing in the playtest was a lot worse. They gave you penalties to your armor class and everything like that. Obviously, we didn't look at everything. But yeah, overall, I will say that it is you are jumping all over the place through this class description trying to find this shit between the conscious minds and the subconscious minds, and then now you've got cantrips that are buried inside of the class descriptions. That is confusing as hell. And you got to be like, oh, I have guidance, but it's not guidance. It's the whatever. It's the special psychic guidance. And you got to remember what the amps do, and they do different things, and they're on different pages. So definitely a lot of stuff going on there. All right, so that's the psychic. Next, the Thaumaturge. I like the Thaumaturge in the playtest, so let's see where we're going here. Luckily, it's all loaded into your VTT. And again, remember, if we get to $50, I'll rate these things. But in terms of a tier ranking, but overall, my impression of the psychic is, I like that it's charisma and int. I like that you get to pick that. That's interesting. It has a lot of the same fun and flavor of the sorcerer by being able to take the different elemental, the different bloodlines like a sorcerer can. You can take your different conscious minds, which is fun. I think a combination of your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, you're going to get something like 24 different combinations, which will probably all feel a little different. You know, the occult spell list is, I think, is number 2. I've come around to really liking the occult. But is this character, this is the big question for me, is this character going to feel substantially different than an occult sorcerer? Are they going to feel like it's not, if I was playing this, would they feel like an occult sorcerer? Hey, Scratch Paper Games with a $25 super chat. That is very, very, very generous. I am going to go ahead and count that, as that is a very nice super chat. We have a couple super chats in here. So we've got $32 of super chats, and I am going to go ahead and I'm going to treat those because that is a very generous set of super chats that you guys have been sending me. So let me add that in. All right. Well, boom. Very cool. Good stuff. Well, thank you, Scratch Paper Games, for that very generous tip. That means I'm going to give this a ranking. Okay, so here's what I thought on this are. In terms of power, I think part of the problem is, full stop, the occult list has magic missile. I imagine that when you unleash your psyche, you are going to want to cast a lot of magic missiles. It's a cool class. It has a lot of flavor. I think the feats have a lot of flavor. In my opinion, this class has a better feeling than the wizard or the sorcerer. The witch, I think, has a similar, very high level of flavor imbued in its feats and its abilities, but the witch struggles a bit. Ultimately, what this really comes down to is the style of game that you're going to play. I do think that a combination of amped cantrips plus unleashed psyches mean that you could do a fair amount of damage, but you're going to be cyclical. You're going to have turns where you're really powerful. You're going to have turns where you're not as powerful. And while I like the occult spell list, the fact of the matter is you are getting less spells than even the wizard. So you're really going to rely on these cantrips. And I dare I say that I feel like playing the psychic is going to feel fairly repetitive. You are going to end up between your unleashed psyche and your amped cantrips and wanting to get value out of your focus points. Hell, you might even have a class where you would normally get focus points, but you don't want to use them because that's going to mess up your next refocus. It's going to really pigeonhole you into casting your cantrips and amplifying them a lot. And I think you have to be okay with that. If you are okay with that, I feel like this class actually will probably end up being an interesting combination of reasonable utility due to the occult spell list, potentially a lot of damage because of things like unleashed psyche magic missiles, and I imagine you're going to get a lot of what I will call weird psychic utility. A lot of divinations, a lot of like telekinetic, a lot of the stuff that we typically associate with, you know, Professor Xavier or Jean Grey, right? Is going to be kind of their wheelhouse. You're not going to be getting as much of the, you know, walls of stone and things like that. It's going to be more about mental stuff, spirit stuff, and that type of aspect. That being said, a lot of the damage types are going to be not your traditional fire and, you know, stuff like that. I mean, although, again, the oscillating wave gets the elemental sort of touch point. And I think that if anything, that's going to be the biggest problem, is I feel like the sorcerer and the psychic probably occupy too similar of a space. And it's going to be, you know, dangerous sorcery, unleashing psyche, right? Like, it's unclear what it is that you're supposed to have as your role. But I think it is an interesting class. I think the sorcerer is still a superior class. You get only 2 spells, but my guess is that the psychic is probably going to turn out to be a B-ish, maybe A, if you can actually get a lot of encounters per day. If you have a ton of encounters per day, I would say it's like an S tier class. So I would say this: if you're routinely only doing 1 or 2 encounters a day, it's like a B tier class. If you are doing 4-ish plus or minus 1 encounters a day, 3 to 4, maybe 5, it's like an A tier class. But if you are doing long encounters, a lot of encounters between long rests, then I think this class is probably S tier. Because you're going to get a lot of value if you're getting long days where the other resource-based classes are going to really fall off. And they are going to have to rely on their lower level spell slots and their really shitty cantrips. And you are still going to have your amps going for a long time and be able to unleash to keep them competitive. And so Total Entry says Psychic is fighter tier. No, it's more like in that first encounter or 2 of the day, you are going to feel very sub-maximal to, say, a sorcerer or a wizard or something. Maybe around the 4th encounter of the day, when the sorcerers and the wizards have cast a lot of their big bad spells, you know, their highest level and their second highest level spells are sort of tapped out, and now they are starting to cast more lower level spells. I think you're going to start to feel a little bit stronger. If you ever get to the point where the casters are literally out of spells or have such low spell slots remaining, if you're higher level, that they're almost pointless, and they're using cantrips, then you're going to feel real superior. So I think a lot of it comes down to your play style, the GM's play style, the style of adventurer that you're going through. But I would say that between, you know, given how most people probably play their encounter days, I think it's probably like an A-. So, in terms of a tier. I mean, spells are very useful, and I personally am a big fan of Occult. I've said this before, but I think Occult beats out Primal. At least the way that Pathfinder 2 seems to be shaking up. All right, let's go on to the Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge. All right, there he is. Big Daddy Thaumaturge. So, it's a charisma class with 8 hit points. This is already kind of scary to me. Because it's not a spellcaster. Hey, Henry!
Henry tipped $10. I finally have a way to build cable in PF2. A GMG dual class time traveler human flesh warp psychic inventor.
I mean, look, PF2's got to be good for something. And if you want to create a flesh warp time traveling techno-organic virus psychic future child of present day mutants that is also very good at fighting and guns from the future, somehow the fact that self-confessed cynic likes cable doesn't surprise me in the least. All right. Thank you for that tip, Henry. All right. Well, let's see what we got here. The Thaumaturge I really liked. You get medium armor. You get trained in every weapon. You get expert fort, expert will, so expert perception. So reasonably good stuff starting off here. You get a bunch of. You're trained in the big four. You're trained in the big four: Arcana, Nature, Occultism, Religion. I like that. I like that a lot. And then you also get 3+ your int. So there's a lot to like on the core chassis. So before we get into the specific class features, the esoterica and all that other stuff, let's take a look at what you get at higher levels. All right, so you get triple expert at 3rd. You get additional implements, which we'll get to in a second, but you get additional implements as you go up level. You get martial weapon proficiency to expert at 5. Great. So you're not on like a war priest schedule. I like that. You can unlock deeper powers of your implements. You get master will at 7, and you get the evasion for will, which is pretty good. I like that a lot, actually. I actually like those abilities better than I like actual evasion, because like the difference between taking half damage and 0 damage, it's just damage. But the difference between a critical success with a will save is usually no effect. Whereas, you know, a lot of times even on a success, you still get some sort of minor effect. They're right on the ball with weapon specialization. They get an intensified vulnerability where they can, we'll talk about this, but they can make a creature invulnerable and they can make them more vulnerable. Class DC goes to expert. They get master perception at 9. They get expertise at 11. They get legendary will, and they treat critical failures as failures, and they treat failures as half damage. They get Juggernaut, getting the benefit. They get master armor proficiency. All right, so they are sitting on a pretty nice chassis. They're going to have really nice saves. The fact that they get Juggernaut and they get Resolve is badass. Those are the 2 best saves to have that effect in. So that's intense. That's great. The fact that they get Master Perception at 9 is amazing. And they get full weapon mastery proficiency up to 13. Plus, they're getting additional benefits to their implements all throughout the tier, all the way up to level 17. When you get a Paragon and a 3rd implement. So, you know, you're actually going to be, you know, you start off with 1, you get a 2nd implement, you get a 3rd implement. So, from a chassis perspective, the Thaumaturge looks amazing. So, let's dig in and see what this bad boy gets. It's on the 8 hit point level, so it's not like a fighter. Feels a little bit more like a rogue. But at the same time, they get all weapon proficiencies, and they get medium armor, which is also nice because it looks like you're not going to want dex anyways. Because you're probably going to want a good strength, because it sounds like you're going to be going into melee. And you're already going to have a good charisma, but you're also going to want a good constitution. So if we needed a good dex too, we'd be kind of shit out of luck. But medium armor proficiency means you can get by with like a 12 or something. All right, at least until fifth level 5. All right, esoteric lore. It's a special lore that can be used to recall knowledges against haunts, curses, and creatures of any type. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Lore DCs are much, much lower. Oh, and you get to use your charisma bonus? And you get dubious knowledge so your GM can't lie to you? Wow. And it automatically improves following the minimal level that you could get to legendary? Wow. That's a great power. That's just a great power. Not only does this allow the class to function, assuming that we're getting into the weaknesses. No, dubious knowledge means that the GM has to tell you a lie and a truth. And you get to pick. Isn't that what that means? Oh, no, dubious knowledge is the one where if you get a failure, instead of telling you nothing, they tell you a lie and a truth. Maybe? I don't remember. I gotta look this up. All right, let me take a look. When you fail but don't critically fail. Okay. All right, never mind. But the thing about monster recalling knowledge on monsters, which is awesome. The problem is the type of monster that you're going to want to recall knowledge on is typically higher level than you. And that means that DCs are even higher, which means it's harder to do this against the creatures that you specifically would want to use them on. But lore DCs are much lower, and the fact that it's tied to your key stat is awesome. And it auto improves. You don't have to spend any more resources. Is great. Shout out to Nethys for upgrading their search. Yeah, about time. It's amazing when people can figure out how to actually, have the number one probably Pathfinder 2 site function, and people don't have to use, secondary Git repositories or Google. The reason why I'm talking about this ability so much, by the way, thank you for that super chat, Self-Confessed Cynic, is not only does this allow the class to function, this is looking at the game and going, okay, this actually has to work in the context of our game. This class is already kind of mad because they're probably going to want con and charisma and strength and probably a little bit of dexterity. And if you were requiring them to rely on their intelligence to be able to do this, you're just asking too much. And the game at this point, they know, doesn't work if you're not like maxed out down a line. So the fact that this automatically improves your proficiency as soon as you can, the fact that it's using your charisma instead of your intelligence, tells me that when they designed this class, they were thinking, okay, this class needs this to function, and we are going to actually make this ability function within the context of the game that we were playing. We are going to allow you to use this for all creature types, and we are going to allow you to use your charisma. So, great power. Okay, then you get an implement. And this is kind of like a subclass, right? Where you choose amulet, bell, chalice, lantern, mirror, regalia, tome, wand, and weapon. And we know from reading that we are going to end up getting 3 of these, albeit the third we're going to get much, much later. And you have a day of downtime to switch it up, or pick it up, a new one. So you're not too fucked, but. Boothby, are we worried that their primary stat is charisma, but they have to hit things with strength or dex? Yes. I mean, just short, yes. Boothby, the Thaumaturge on the surface is a little bit like an inventor, right? Where the inventor's primary stat is int, and yet they are attacking, if you're an inventor with a big weapon, you're attacking with strength. So, you're going to be 1, maybe 2 points behind. So that it can be problematic for absolutely sure. There's also sort of weird levels in the game where it doesn't matter as much. Like, for example, if you have an 18 in your charisma and then your strength is 16, then at level 5, you can take your 16 and go up to an 18, but your 18 only goes to a 19. So now they're actually both +4 for at least 5 levels of the game until you get to level 10. So it kind of depends on what level ranges you're expecting to play through. There's also the possibility that you put your charisma at 14 and then the class boost takes it to 16, and you end up with, your stats a little bit lower in that respect. Because it really comes down to how much are you using that charisma, that class DC, that bonus to, let's say, your esoteric lore. How much do you really need that 18? So I think there's some interesting ability score decisions to be made here, and I think that's I think it's interesting. I actually think that's a kind of a good thing. It's not just automatically like 4th edition did this thing where, like, if a class had primary stat con, they would get an ability that would let them attack in melee with their constitution score. If this class was a 4th edition class, it would be attacking in melee with its charisma, which works from a gaming perspective, but can feel a little bit weird. It certainly boggles the mind of simulation, but it's a little bit tough. Self-confessed Senna says he would give the psychic a C or a B if he's feeling generous. Keep in mind, folks, that he does not like occult as much as I do. Extreme edge case GMs that force a lot of battles per day, A. Again, I think for the way that most people play Pathfinder 2, I think you're going to end up with somewhere in a B range, high B. And maybe a right combination. I do think that one charisma build with the heal is probably one of the better ones of the bunch. So I think it's right there in that B to A range. Now, to be clear, that is probably weaker than most of the classes, caster classes, at least the caster classes from the core rulebook. Is that better than the Oracle? My feeling is yes. It's probably, is it better than like the Witch? I think you're starting to get into that range. But in terms of like sorcerer, druid, wizard, cloistered cleric, I think those 4 classes are probably gonna be above the psychic in pretty much every situation. The exemption being if you're playing this crazy game, if you had a party that was like a fighter and a monk and a rogue and a psychic, and you could literally just never take a long rest for the entire campaign. You could just go like level 1 to 20 all without ever taking a long rest. That'd be kind of cool. All right, back to the Thaumaturge. So you get this implement, and you get to pick one of these things, and then you also get the exploit vulnerability. Once per round, 1 action. Select a creature you can see and attempt an esoteric lore check against a standard DC for its level as you retrieve the right object from your esoterica and use your implement. Okay, so this is like a special recall knowledge check, because if you succeed, you recall an important fact about the creature, learning its highest weakness or one of its highest weaknesses if it has multiples of the same value, but not its other weaknesses. You can exploit either the creature's mortal weakness or personal antithesis. Your armed and weapon strikes against the creature become magical. Now, this already creates a problem for me, because this implies that recall knowledge should not be giving out information about a creature's weaknesses. But the text in the book clearly states nothing of the sort. And it also creates a problem where if someone has recall knowledge and doesn't have this ability, then there's a crossover here. There's a problem, because now you're thinking to yourself, okay, so what does recall knowledge do? If recall knowledge doesn't do this, what does recall knowledge even do? If it's not telling me, if I need this ability in order to, do this stuff about its weaknesses, its resistances, its immunities, including their amount, then what is recall knowledge supposed to do? Like, if I make a recall knowledge check, for example, This says critical success. You learn all of a creature's resistances, weaknesses, and immunities, including the amounts of the resistances, any unusual weaknesses, such as what spells will pass through a golem's anti-magic. So if I make a recall knowledge check and succeed, what is the GM supposed to tell me? That the golem's favorite color is purple? That it really likes cheesecake? Like, what is the... If this is what this does, then what is recall knowledge even supposed to do? So, Christoph, this is a limited recall knowledge. No, look at this. You recall an important fact about the creature. I mean, isn't that what recall knowledge does baseline? I thought it was. Cheesecake. By the way, thank you everybody for staying with us and tuning in today. We're right in the middle of the Thaumaturge. We just got done talking about the psychic. So, Christoph, I can see what you're saying. You're saying you recall an important fact about the creature, learning its highest weakness. So that important fact that we are learning is its highest weakness, which then implies that recall knowledge recalls unimportant facts about the creature. Well, recall knowledge can give hit points, AC saves. Can it? Right? We don't know, but regardless. So obviously the most important thing here is the second part of this. You can attempt to exploit vulnerabilities one of two ways, either by invoking properties that repel the creature or by attempting a more improvisational ad hoc method with your esoterica. Boy, that is a just clumsy use of the English language. Or by attempting a more improvisational ad hoc method with your esoterica that can impose a custom weakness on any creature, albeit one that usually isn't as dire as a creature's existing weakness. Wow. If they want to get paid by the word, I would be fine if they just ended every sentence with like or something like that. That would be fine. Exactly, GM Scott. Exactly. All right. So this is very similar to the playtest. After identifying a creature's weakness, you can thematically resonate a bit of esoterica to attune your attacks to the discovery. Your unarmed and weapon strikes activate the highest weakness you discovered, even though your damage type for your weapon doesn't change. So you get to trigger their weakness. Well, that's great. If the creature doesn't have a weakness, you can improvise a weakness. This causes the target creature, and only the target creature, to gain a weakness against your unarmed and weapon strikes equal to 2 plus half your level. So at level 10, it's weakness 7. At level 20, that's weakness 12. That's auto. That's custom. That's pretty freaking great. Yes, it's gated behind a skill check, but so is an inventor's overdrive. So already this class has very strong inventor vibes to me, where you are going to be relying upon a check very similar to the inventor's overdrive, or perhaps very similar to the ranger's hunt prey. And I should note that this works only against that creature, because if I believe correctly, if I was fighting, let me see if I read this. If I was fighting 3 golems, or not golems is a bad example. If I was fighting 3 devils that are all identical creatures, then if I exploit the vulnerability of one of the creatures and I can align my esoterica against that vulnerability, okay, this damage affects the target of your exploited vulnerability, as well as any other creatures of the exact same type, but not with the same weakness, which is a little weird. But if I was fighting the same creature, I might only have to make this check once. Obviously, the personal antithesis would have to be unique for each one, and that's fine. But it's like an inventor. You're making a check, you want to crit or succeed, you're going to get a damage bonus, but you're also getting additional, you're getting information, you're getting this custom weakness, or you're getting this weakness exploit, which is a pretty good amount of damage. I mean, some creatures are going to be +5, +10, +15 damage on your strikes. That's pretty good damage. You get something for failure too. Failing to recall a salient weakness about the creature, you instead attempt to exploit a more personal vulnerability. You can exploit only the creature's personal antithesis. Okay. And you still get the magical bonus. So if you can't get their full weakness, you can at least create the custom weakness, which is awesome. I mean, this is a great power, and you're getting great information for the rest of your party members while basically going into Thaumaturge Rage, or Inventor Overdrive, so that you can pump up your damage. Seems pretty straightforward. To the point where this power is like, it's just too good, like it's too good because you're going to do it all the time. And you basically can't play the class without doing this, and you're going to do this all the time. So you're just going to be making this check over and over again. And your esoteric lore check is the same thing against every single creature in the game. The check doesn't ever change. So, then you also get this implement's empowerment ability. The power of your implement can be turned to the task of combat. When you strike, you can trace mystical patterns with the implement, causing 2 additional points of damage per weapon damage die. So 2 points, then +4 points. So this channeling the power requires full use of your hands. You don't gain the benefit of the implement's empowerment if you are holding anything in either hand other than a single one-handed weapon, other implements, or esoterica. So this guy is a damage beast. 2 additional damage points per weapon damage die. So when you get a striking rune, you're doing +4 damage and hitting all of their weaknesses. That could easily be +9 damage. That's like more damage than the giant instinct barbarian. Yikes. Now, you have to be using a one-handed weapon. So I guess that sort of limits you a little bit, but that's a beastly amount of damage. And they get good weapon. They get standard, at 5 expert, at 13 master. Then obviously strength is not their key ability score. So they aren't going to have the accuracy that something like a ranger or a rogue or a barbarian would have. So that's probably keeping them from being too busted. Because one, assuming you want to be using melee weapons, and the existence of this makes me think you're gonna want to be using melee weapons, because if you're using striked weapon, you're already in medium armor, so like you don't really want to have a good dex. Hey, self-confessed cynic with a super chat. Thaumaturge Flick Mace Orphanage under construction. Yeah, for sure. I mean, this class is definitely going to be doing that. Go dex and do agile, add finesse. Okay, all right, that could work. That's actually not bad, Damien. This should work with a two-handed weapon with the weapon implement, I think. Well, we haven't gotten to the weapon implement yet, Strat, so we'll have to see. Now remember, there's like 7 implements. You get to pick 3 of them. One you don't get till... You get the second one pretty close. You get it at 5, which is great. You don't get the third one until frickin' level 17 or 15. That's not so bad, but I mean, to be fair, most people are not going to be getting there. Yeah, this class makes the Outwit Ranger embarrassing. This class makes the Outwit Ranger just... It was already underpowered and pretty bad, but there's like no reason to ever play it now. Not to mention, this class has got an incredible chassis. Just incredible chassis. Great armor, great saves, great perception, great core abilities in this, gaining this esoteric lore skill, gaining this exploit vulnerability ability, and then gaining this implement empowerment ability. So it's just full on the board, just really, really good. All right, so let's go to our implements. Now, we get 1 implement, and we can get 1 implement's adept power at 7, and then we get our second implement's ability at 11, and then we get one of our adepts gets a paragon. So we are going to end up with 3 implements, one which will be Paragon, one which will be Adept, and one which will be regular, our last one that we got. Okay. Here we go. Amulets are protective. You get the Amulet's Abeyance. And it's 15-foot champion reaction. They gain resistance to 2+ your level. Now, you don't get the other benefit, like letting them step, or you don't get the other benefit, like you getting to make an attack of opportunity. So it doesn't completely shit on the champion, but it's pretty good. If you take this to Adept, when you use Abeyance, you or your ally chooses one type of damage dealt by the triggering attacks and gains resistance 5 against this damage type until the start of your next turn. So it's like an ongoing damage resistance. That's okay. It's not amazing. And Paragon is the entire group. Wow, that's pretty good. You know, an AoE. Also, someone pointed out here, Total Entropy, you can use this Amulet's ability not just on your target ally, but also on yourself. So that is pretty nice. This is overall pretty cool. And the Paragon benefit is pretty great. And it's a reaction. You can use it every turn. That's incredible. And if you have an amulet, then you get a +2 status bonus to AC against the target of your exploit vulnerability. We just spent last spell stream talking about how very difficult it is to get status bonuses to AC. Inspired Defense from the Bard is the only way that you can really get this kind of status bonus from an AC. Divine Aura is the other way, but it's a real pain in the ass. It's limited by alignment, and it's a sustained spell from the Cleric. That is really powerful. This is a very strong protective benefit, not just for you, but for your whole party. A+ on an amulet. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. Bell is sounds and emotions, soothing tones, startling other ones. You can ring a bell, which is in a reaction. Are they all reactions? No, they're not. Okay. So this one lets you, when your exploited vulnerability makes a strike or casts a spell, you can ring the bell, and you can either stupefy them, or you can make them clumsy. That's okay. Okay, and then eventually it lasts for 3 rounds instead of 1 round with the Adept. That's pretty good. Now that becomes a lot more nice. If you intensify the vulnerability, when you strike the target of your vulnerability, it plays a haunting tone, and the creature takes a -2 status penalty on saves against your ring bell, or -3 penalty on critical hit. That's a pretty decent saving throw penalty. That's interesting. And if you go to Paragon, you can affect many foes. All the conditions value from Ring Bell increase to 2 or 3, and it can trigger off the strike or spell of any enemy, not just your exploit. I mean, it's kind of sad that you have to go that high level, but I like the fact that it's a 30-foot range. Seems pretty good. Chalice. Cheers. You can drink from it or feed it to an ally. So it's once per round, 1 action. You can drink from the chalice. If you take a sip, you get temp HP +2 plus your half. That's pretty good. And if you drain it, you heal 3 hit points per level. That's okay. So it's like 60 at level 20. But after it's drained, it's left with only slowly correcting dregs, and it can only be drained again, though it can still be sipped from. If 10 minutes passes, okay. So this is kind of like Lay on Hands. Doesn't heal quite as much as Lay on Hands, but with the additional benefit that you can just sip it out with this temporary hit points. Like a buffer of something like, 3 to 12 hit points temporary each round. It's okay. If you go to Adept, blood empowers your chalice. Okay, very Holy Grail vibes there. Drinking from the chalice before the end of your next turn grants the injured creature greater restoration. On a sip, The temporary hit points increase to 2 plus your charisma modifier, and the chalice heals 5 hit points. Okay, so if somebody does take damage from a crit or persistent bleed, then you can get them with a super heal. This feels a little conditional. Yada yada. Paragon, it also reduces conditions and attempts to counteract diseases. All right. Lantern looks like it shows divinations, invisibilities. Mirror is illusions. Regalia is diplomacy and sort of more saving throws against fear, and people can't be frightened as easily. Tome is knowledge to recall knowledge checks, and Wand lets you sort of fling magical damage, sort of gaining a quasi cantrip ability, and you can get different damage types that you can pick between. Also good at targeting people's weaknesses. And then weapon. You can only choose a one-handed weapon as an implement. Okay, so you'll never really be able to go two-handed with a two-handed weapon. Let's see what you get here. You get basically an attack of opportunity. But it has to but it's kind of like hunt prey, where or disrupt prey, where it has to be against the person that you're exploiting the vulnerability of. And then even if you're using a ranged weapon, it has to be within 10 feet. People are saying read Tome because it's crazy. All right, Tome. Okay, +1 circumstance bonus to recall knowledge. During your daily prep, you can gain the trained proficiency rank in 2 skill choices. Cool, very fun, lots of versatility. At 3rd level, expert, trained in 1. At 5th level, expert in both. That's very cool. Pick your poison. Adept benefits. While holding the tome at the start of your turn each round, attempt to recall knowledge check against. That's okay. Cool fact, but like this is very annoying. Like, I don't want to make a recall knowledge check each round. And if I do it, I get a +1 circumstance bonus to 1 attack roll against that creature before the start of my next turn. It's a lot of work. My temporary proficiencies continue to expand to master. I get kind of a quasi hero point, sort of. And yeah. So the tome gives +1 circumstance bonus to hit at level 7. No, it doesn't. I have to make a recall knowledge check every turn, which is just so annoying and just so draining on the system. And then if I succeed, I get a +1 circumstance bonus to my next attack roll. And by the way, it's a circumstance bonus, so it doesn't stack with aid. So that isn't as good. So yeah. And then we get some feats. Which, boy, we got a lot of feats here. I don't know if there's any that anybody wants to particularly call out here, but whenever you exploit, you get a +1 status bonus. You get to make free talismans. Talismans were kind of suck, but does weapon still let you disrupt? Let's see. Yes, if your attack is a critical hit, you disrupt the triggering action. So that's pretty good. Scroll Thaumaturge is wild, says Andrew Miller. All right, Andrew, we'll check it out. Your multiple destinatory story of magical enemies means you want to activate the magic and scrolls with ease. You can activate scrolls of any magical tradition using your Thaumaturge class DC for the scrolls DC rather than a spell's particular DC. Hey, that is really good. You can draw and activate scrolls with the same hand holding an implement. Wow. Again. Yeah, this design is really it's really gamey. Both of these classes have very, very high G scores and very, very low S scores. That's correct, Strat. You could be having a shield, right? Like a normal shield. And then you could have your implement be a weapon, like a one-handed bastard sword, and you can still pull out a scroll and use scroll thaumaturgy. Simulation here is flush down the toilet. And you have to make a decision. Obviously, there's a lot of flavor here. None of this is narrative. Scroll of True Strike Thaumaturge. You know it, Strat. Oh my god, that's the build, Strat. That's the build, Strat. Check out the weapons level 9. Okay, at Adept. Well, okay, so the Adept benefit is when you use the Implement Interruption and fail, you still deal 1 point of damage, which could trigger weakness. That's not bad. Intensify Vulnerability. Your weapon is drawn to the enemy. So you get a +2 status bonus to attack rolls against the target of your exploit vulnerability. So that's basically like a permanent heroism, at least in terms of the status bonus, a level 6 heroism. That's not... I mean, that's good. I mean, that's pretty good. And by the way, at 17, you disrupt on a hit, not just a critical hit. Yeah, so this Intensify Vulnerability is pretty dang good. Obviously, when we're talking about endgame stacking all these other abilities, like Heroism, but the fact that you just get this, and by the way, Heroism 6 is a level 9, or level, you have to be a level 11 to cast Heroism 6, and you're getting this at 9. So you're getting this before they can even cast Heroism 6, and when they can cast Heroism 6, they're only going to have 1 or 2 of them a day. So this is really, for all intents and purposes, this is +2 to hit for this character. Like you might be 1 point behind the Barbarian or the Ranger in attack roll because of the key stat differential. But when you get this, for most purposes, you're going to be a point ahead of them. You're going to have a better attack roll than the other martial characters. At certain levels, actually, like when you get this, if your strength was 16 and then at 5 you took it to 18 and they took their 18s to 19, so you're both at +4 stat bonus and you're both expert in your weapons, so your base is both +9 plus your level, obviously, plus your weapon bonus, so you're same, and then you're 2 points higher. This makes you a fighter. You know, that's pretty crazy. That's just an insane benefit. CJ Pan says, check out the Legendary Tome. Legendary Tome. Am I in the right place? You mean Paragon Tome. Paragon Tome. In addition to the other benefits, the tome's information alerts you to ambushes. When holding the tome, you can always roll a skill check for initiative against creatures or haunts using esoteric lore. And if you do so, you get a +3 circumstance bonus to your initiative roll. Well, that's pretty good. The initiate's benefits circumstance bonus to recall knowledge from your tome increases +2. And whenever you succeed at recall knowledge, the bonus applies to all attack rolls you make before the start of your next turn, not just the next one. And when you get your 2 temporary skills, they're both legendary. Yeah, I mean, this class is this class has a major problem. This class has a major flaw in it, which is you're going to want all of these, right? And you're going to want all of these at Adept or even at Paragon. And the fact that Paragon, you do have to wait till 15, which kind of sucks. But the fact that you get Adept at 5 feels real good. I think that's like a cool level to start getting it. When do you get your second Adept? At 11, also. That feels great. You're just going to want all of these. And like you're going to be bummed that you can't get all of them. You know, Ian Ryder, I'm being sarcastic. I'm sorry. I'm being sarcastic. These aren't, there's a difference between a hard choice. There's a difference between a hard choice, being totally sarcastic here. Okay. F in the chat for people not being, or paying attention. A hard choice is something like, hey, do you want to have to, sell your car and all your possessions, or do you want to put your dog down? That's a hard choice. This is a choice like, hey, do you want the $150 fillet, or do you want the beautifully prepared lobster? And you're like, damn, man, I just want surf and turf. You know, I want them both. Why do I got to choose? This is a really good class. And again, I haven't even gotten into the feats yet. But if I'm excited to play the class without ever having to put, without even reading the feats, I think that's incredible. This class is going to play the Pathfinder 2 game really well. It's designed to gain information and knowledge, which, as you know, on this channel, I am a huge proponent of. That's going to help you not just in combat, it's going to help you with the adventure as well. It's going to help you. And obviously, you know, if you're playing a sort of Scooby-Doo mystery version of Pathfinder 2, the fact that esoteric knowledge applies to all haunts and curses and all that other creepy, weird shit is going to be even better. But just look at some of these fun things here, like extra activation out of magical items. The fact that they are filling a very unique niche too, which is, hey, we're also the class, like, we're the class that's cool with consumables, you know, like, maybe even cooler than the alchemist is, between scrolls and talismans, sharing people's, look at this, extra, even better investiture. So this is also just like the magic item class. And who doesn't love magic items? Magic items are so fun. And they get this incredible combat package on top of that. Wow. Just very impressed. Yeah. This class is really good. This class is like, I mean, it's definitely A, but it is an S. All right, we got a super chat from Self-Confessed Cynic with him weighing in. Self-Confessed Cynic says, Thaumaturge sits on that line between A and S, in my opinion, leaning towards S. The mad is the only pain. I agree. The multiple attribute dependency is a problem. You know, you're going to be stretched pretty thin. I think you're going to get really good mileage out of this game. And the more that I've played Pathfinder 2, the more that I realize that maybe you're playing with a GM who doesn't have the sort of broad base of recall knowledge like that I use, but you need to know these things. You need to know these weaknesses and stuff. It can make such a huge difference with the right damage and the right build, with the right exploit, with something like a True Strike scroll, like we were talking before. I mean, this guy's going to just be a damage monster, and can really be helping out the party too by saying, hey, let's build our characters to be fairly versatile and make sure, oh, yep, fire is its highest weakness. Let's go after that. And just gaining information left and right. The fact that it even just starts with all of the skills in these things trained, this esoteric lore goes up. You know, I ultimately think that because of the multiple attribute dependency, I am not going to give this class an S. I think that you can build this class to kind of do whatever you want to do. If you want to be a combat monster, you know, you can pick up scroll, you can pick up the weapon implement and then take that to Paragon, and you could maybe pick up the chalice or whatever. I completely lost this class here. Here it is. There we go. Sorry, I had to go find it. You could pick up the weapon and wand implement and just be this, you know, pretty cool wielder of death. If you wanted to be a little bit more knowledge based, you could pick up a tome. But the best part is you could start with the weapon and then pick up the tome at level 5. And yeah, cool. Now I get to do both. I don't have to just be pigeonholed into this one thing that I do over and over again. And the game gives me some breathing room. The class gives me some breathing room. I can start off one way, see how the game develops, see how my play style develops. And then at level 5, I can come in here and pick up a tome. Very, very, very cool. Total Entry says, I think the Thaumaturge has an action issue with a limitation on implements, so it's more of an A. I think the Thaumaturge asks a lot more of the player both to know the game system and to roleplay the character in a good way. Strat says it's a classic AIDSC implementation. I feel like they also struggle for actions. 3 actions with them feel so little because they have a lot of setup and a lot of options. Well, okay. But I mean, is having options, like the spider doesn't have any options. Their options are just, they double slash, each round or whatever. It's just very, very point blank. I do agree that because, like a barbarian, because you're priced into basically exploiting something's weakness, that is a penalty. And I think you're going to end up being a solid A on this class. I think this is a, I love the design of this class. I love how you get these pseudo subtypes. I love how you pick up you pick up your first one at level 1, then you get a second one at level 5, then one of your 2 goes up to adept at 7, and then at 11 you pick up at 11 you get a second one at adept. Now they're both at adept. Then at 15 you get a third one, and then at 17 one of them becomes paragon. I love that sort of step, because what ends up happening now is if my character starts the campaign with just, say, a weapon implement, well, when I get to level 5 and I pick up my second implement, I could pick up something that'll really change the way that my character is playing in a way that picking a feat doesn't do with other classes. And if I go one direction with an implement over another implement, I'm opening up a whole new fun opportunity for me to play in a different way. Now you could say you could do that with retraining, but then I'm giving up what my character started with. Maybe that weapon, the implement, is a big part of who my character is and what my character does. I don't want to give that up. So this is a very natural way for a character design to evolve without having to retrain and to give up what you started with. And yeah, I think it's a great class. So I think I agree with Self-Confessed Cynic here. I think some builds will probably be S. With special, very narrow niche builds. But I think overall you're gonna be very impressed with this class. I think I'm gonna say A, but I could be wrong, and it could end up being an A tier or S tier class. So, and you know what? I don't know that I love this art. I think this art looks a bit silly to me. But overall, the theme of this class, I think, is really interesting. I think it feels like someone that would be an adventurer. I think it feels like a class that makes sense that this person is, going into haunted dungeons and trekking on these quests to go find these crumbling ruins of ancient gods and strange magics. It feels very appropriate that the character is equipped this way. So I love it. Yes, Andrew, I agree. The art's too big and beefy for medium armor and 8 hit points per level. And again, fantastic chassis. The game is you're gonna like the saving throw package and all the stuff that it sets you with. So B psychic, A thaumaturge. Possibly I could be underrating the thaumaturge. It could be closer to an S. I think the psychic will end up being a B, but if you go with really long classes, days, I should say, I think you're going to end up with a higher rating on that. A, probably not S, because at the end of the day, you're still just going to really casting really good cantrips, and you do only have 2 spells per level, so that is going to come back to bite you in the ass. And even an amped cantrip isn't as good as a high level prepared or spontaneous caster's actual spell slot. So yeah, very impressed. Great. Good. I will say, people are bitching about again, let me look at this page here. It's got this top border, and then the art bleeds in, and you got 2 columns of text, and then you have art on the bottom of the page, literally a full wrapper of art. Like that's way too much. And here's the thing. It's like, okay, well, that's cool and all, but also it just repeats endlessly. So that's not as cool. This art here is terrible. All right, so Thaumaturge, cool. Psychic, cool. I just don't know that I'm gonna. I just don't think it's gonna to be as powerful the way that most people play. All right, so that was the 2 classes from Dark Archives. Thoughts? Well, I think they improved the Psychic. My original thought on the Psychic was it was almost an unplayable class. But I do think that they made some improvements. They made some improvements to Psychic Unleashing. The fact that you can unleash a level in round 2 now instead of round 3, which you could only do in the playtest, big benefit. The fact that you don't get an AC penalty and all that other garbage that you used to get from the other one, big benefit. So they definitely improved that. I think you're going to end up casting a lot of cantrips, and I think that'll be really boring. But maybe for your play style, that's fine. And Thaumaturge impressed me in the playtest, and honestly, it looks like they kept the most of that intact. It looks really good. Damien wants me to look at the first and last of the Thaumaturge. Okay. All right. Also, remember, Thaumaturge is a not caster, so he's actually going to get one of these feats at level 1 without having to be a human. Okay, here we go. Ammunition Thaumaturgy. You can interact to reload your weapon using the hand holding your implement. There you go. Okay. So you can actually be a ranged Thaumaturge if you want to. I was thinking that you really couldn't, but you can. Because, again, the game mechanics are winning out over the simulation here. Big time. Diverse lore. You can take a -2 penalty to your check to recall knowledge with esoteric lore to recall knowledge about any topic. Additionally, when you succeed at your check to exploit a vulnerability, compare the result of your esoteric lore check to the DC to recall knowledge for that creature. If the number would be a success or a critical success, you gain information as if you had succeeded at a recall knowledge check. So this is letting you double dip. As we said before, that exploit vulnerability was not a normal recall knowledge. It was just about the weakness. Well, this lets you do both. Pretty good. Divine disharmony. Oh, is this Paizo shitting on religion again? It sure is. Guess what? If they're particularly devoted to a deity or a cleric, you get +2 bonus to your spell check or to your skill check. And if you crit, guess what? They're flat-footed to your attacks. And if they success, they're flat-footed against your attacks until the end of your current turn. And the other one, the end of your next turn if you critical success. They just love shitting on divine people. They're like, look at all these silly people worshiping gods. And if they despise all deities, they are immune. Yes, hashtag hate on divine. That's absolutely exactly right. Which I do believe it's actually kind of a political statement. But outside of that, it's also stupid because Galarian is full of gods and they like walk to earth and like grant spells and like it's, very common. Self-confessed cynic, $2 super chat. Man, regardless of rating, I would want to play this. Yeah, I think this is a great class. I actually wanted to play this class when we were playing Pathfinder 2 in Smith's campaign because I thought it would be fun. It would be a good way to actually get some play experience for the playtest. But he said, no, it's got to be, you've got to be a real class. I think this class would be fun to play. So let's see what else we got here besides these. So far I'm impressed with these. You get a familiar. All right, that's cool. I mean, why not? Again, you're a martial character gaining a familiar. Sweet. Haunt ingenuity. Okay, great. This is just like the ghost hunter archetype where they can be searching. You basically get to take double exploration actions. You basically get to keep searching even if you're not searching for haunts. And you get to basically get the rogue's ability. It's like rogue trap finding, but only for haunts. This is super limited and this is super specific, But I'll tell you this, if you're playing Abomination Vaults, you're going to get good mileage out of this feat. So really depends on the campaign, but it's flavorful and it's fun. Root to Life, 1 action or 2 action. Okay, flowers, plants, connect them. You place a small plant or symbol on an adjacent dying creature, and they immediately stabilize. Okay. If you spend 2 actions, you empower the act further, adding the auditory trait, and when you do, attempt flat checks to remove each source of persistent damage to the target. I don't know that this is particularly effective, and it's DC 10 instead of DC 15. I don't know if this is any good, but it's fun and it's flavorful, and it feels like it's really putting a new tool in your tool belt. So I appreciate that. Scroll Thaumaturge we talked about before. You can use any and all scrolls. No fucking around with taking multiple free archetype dedications just so you can cast it. It's just boom. And you get to use the same DC. So, I mean, that's pretty good. Rasley says it's touch stabilized for 1 action. Agreed. I mean, it only comes up if someone's actually unconscious. How often people go unconscious in your game? If it's my game, it's not often. But maybe in your game it happens all the time, in which case I think it'd be a great feat. Can't complain on that. At level 2, you can call your implement to you. Again, very kind of campaign specific, but for a level 2 feat, being able to suck it to your hand from a mile away. All right, not bad. You get your enhanced familiar. We talked about this esoteric warden to get a bonus to your armor class. This talisman esoterica is really fun and cool. Makes talismans a lot better because you don't have to actually spend money on them. And you can turn away misfortune as a reaction when you would attempt a roll affected by misfortune. I don't know how often that really comes up, but it cancels it out and you get to roll as normally. Not a good feat because it hardly ever comes up, but you know, at least they're trying. So that's like our low level feats. Let's see, know it all here. When you succeed at a check to recall knowledge, you gain additional information no matter what. When you critically succeed, at the GM's discretion, you might gain even more information. Wow. All right, high level, 20th. Ubiquitous weakness. You've nurtured your bonds with your comrades, allowing you to share the benefits of your esoterica. When you exploit vulnerability and choose mortal weakness, select any number of allies within 30 feet of you. Their strikes apply this weakness for mortal weakness the same ways. I mean, this is bonkers. Obviously, you're level 20. It doesn't really matter, but the fact that everybody gets to ding the weakness now, and at level 20, that could be easily weakness 15, weakness 20. I mean, you're talking about adding 20 damage to everybody's attacks. That's just, that's crazy. Unlimited demise. A demence. You get to cast Resplendent Mansion. I mean, cool, but we can do better than that. Wonder Worker. The Thaumaturge's path culminates with the working of wonders. Once per day, you can align your esoteric to cast a spell of 8th level or lower. The spell must be a common or one to which you have access. You must choose a spell of tradition for which you are legendary and the associated skill. That is cool. But overall. So I think these are really, really interesting classes. I'll say this. This represents a paradigm shift. Okay. I will say this. This represents a paradigm shift in the way that they are designing classes for Pathfinder 2. And in a way that we didn't really see with any of the prior classes. These classes, to me, are being designed with sort of game mechanics and the way that Pathfinder 2 works at the forefront. In other words, they are gamist-centric classes. Yeah, there's a lot of flavor there. But a lot of these mechanics, like you can only use this in an encounter, and I have both hands full with weapons, but I can somehow still pull out a scroll because, like, that's what I need for the class to work. Or my esoteric knowledge is tied to my charisma. Like, that doesn't even make any sort of sense from a simulationist perspective, but from a game perspective, it makes a ton of sense. That's my character's key ability score. That's what I'm going to have a high stat in. Like, I need this skill for my class to work. So yeah, I'm going to esoteric knowledge with my charisma, with my personality. It doesn't make any sense. The simulation here is bad, but the game score is really high. And it means that that's what they're thinking about as they're designing these classes going forward. That to me signifies that Paizo is maybe taking now from our Discord, which is a part of our Knights of the Last Call Patreon, patreon.com/Knights of the Last Call. Check it out today. We have a lot of conversations. People are playing Pathfinder 2 all the time. And my general experience from looking at folks is that the Pathfinder 2 player base is more game eccentric. They are coming to this game from video games. They are playing God of War and Elden Ring, and they are coming to Pathfinder 2, or they are coming to Pathfinder 2 from 5th edition because they want a more intense and rewarding game experience in the sense of the mechanics and the challenge of the combat as sport. And that means that Paizo, I think, is feeling empowered to move away from the dark, the very historical simulationist roots. Because when they made Pathfinder 2, they were like, look, we have this whole base of Pathfinder 1, which is tied off of 3rd edition D&D, which is like a very simulationist heavy game. And we saw what happened to 4th edition, which went full gamist mode. You know, it went from here to here. We don't want to do that. So we're going to take a step. We're not going to go full. We're just going to take a step. And I think the response from people when they're seeing people play, and at least when I'm seeing people on our Discord, and I'm not passing judgment here, but I think that Pathfinder 2, remember, I've said, and I will say many, many times, you can role play in any game ever, because role playing, what we call Knights of the Last Call, fluffy bullshit time, doesn't matter what the mechanics of the game are. Like, if I want to talk in character, I can talk in character. Whether I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons or Dungeon World or, Fate or 5th edition, talking in character, there's no rule in the game for talking in character. And that's what role-playing is. So none of these games prevent you from role-playing. But the audience that Pathfinder 2 is attracting are people that are very interested in builds and combat and, testing their character against the challenges, the mechanical challenges of the GM or of the adventure. They want that combat as sport. They want to show up to the game and test their might against the challenges of the session and see how well they can do. And they want to use strategy and tactics, and the strategy being the build of the character that they made and the composition of the party that they put together, and the tactics being the spells that you're going to cast, the feats and activities that you're going to utilize, the magical items that you are going to use during the course of a fight, the actions, the aids, the movement, all that other stuff, in order to create essentially a condition where between action economy and bonuses, you gain such a sizable bonus against your opponent that you're able to defeat them hands down. Now, this is stymied somewhat by the fact that, the balance of the game is very much pushed in the party's favor. But when I look at the games that are being played on our Knights of Last Call Discord, especially Northern Reaches, which is our Pathfinder 2 community game, these people are using severes like they're going out of style. Like, if there's no point to throw a moderate encounter at these folks. It's not even waste anybody's time. So it's like severe is like the minimum. Extreme, yeah, okay, that might get people to pay attention because they're really pushing the game to its limit. Are there people out there very casually playing Pathfinder 2? I'm sure there are, but I think there's a selection bias here. I think if you came to Pathfinder 2 from 5th edition, it's because you were playing 5th edition and said, there is not enough here. There's not enough crunch. There's not enough game mechanics. There's not enough complexity. I want complexity. And so Pathfinder 2 is sort of self-selecting for that. And here we are 3 years later, literally. It came out Gen Con 2019, and tomorrow is Gen Con 2022. And now I think we've established a community which wants game-based mechanics. These classes are very heavily game-based. Yeah, they have a lot of flavor, but they're very heavily game-based as well. All right. Well, it is 9:30, and we did not get a chance to go through the rest of the book. I guess we'll have to wait for another day. I mean, most people just wanted to hear me about the classes anyways. Let's see what we got here. I like, we didn't do a Book of the Dead review, but I do like some of these cryptid responses. Hold on a sec here. I mean, part of this is flavor. Do you like weird, culty, stuff? Like, if you like that kind of stuff, I think the game would probably be much more, I think you can have a lot more fun with that. All right, so here we go. The stolen case files. We've got cryptids, secret societies, deviant abilities, mirrors and imposters, cults, curses and pacts, temporal anomalies, and mindscapes. All right, so this is different paranormal topics. Okay. We've got cryptids and strange creatures. So, cryptozoology, isn't it kind of weird because it's Pathfinder and, isn't every monster already kind of a weird, strange creature? We got a lot of flavor text here thrown in here. And then there's some feats thrown in here, which are rare, which happens after you have a dramatic moment in a story. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not going to read all these feats, but I don't think that this idea is horrible. But I mean, if these, obviously I'm sure these feats are very underwhelming. But personally, my thought process on this would be, these shouldn't be feats. You should just give people these. Just give people these. Like, just give them these. Don't make them take them. Just give them. Cryptids. To make something a cryptid, make it experimental, a mutant, primeval, rumored. That's okay. That's silly. Cryptid gear. Again, everything in these games is a cryptid. Like, isn't a griffin a cryptid? Like, that's... Look, like, there's literally a freaking... That's like that's not a cryptid. That's just in the bestiary. It's not like a... a chimera shouldn't be something that is a cryptid. Cryptid class feats that aren't tied to any sort of feat. Oh, well, I guess it's got the druid. And then there's randomly, like, some adventures in the middle of this book. Okay. It's like one encounter. Okay, I don't know how much I love that. Then we get some journal entries. With some random text that's difficult to read for some odd reason. I don't know why they felt it was necessary to use this. And then there's a background randomly here at the end of this page. Okay. So the cryptid section I am going to give, I don't know, like a C- to. Like, what do we need cryptids for? We're fighting monsters all the time. I like aftermath feats. That's the only thing I really liked from this section. Also, like, I hate when they do this. When there's just randomly a background feat on some page somewhere, somehow. Like, this feat is like, this feat screams, never use this book at your actual table. Just use Archives of Nethys. All right, so secret societies. Now, what I would want out of secret societies is like a cool subsystem, maybe a way to use victory points or clocks or some sort of meta structure, like the kind that like we like to build for, like boss fights or, things like that, right? Like some sort of actual mechanics. But we get some skill feats. And we get a secret society member. Okay. This isn't bad. All right. This isn't actually bad. I don't actually mind this. Some random nonsense garbage gear. Cool. But stuff that a secret society would want. Services from a secret society. And then a little mini adventure. I don't know. This section seems better to me. Even if I hate this stuff. And okay. Apparently this is just a recurring thing where they have a page with badly written text and then a rare background. Or sometimes a spell. Okay, I don't like this formatting. Like, I don't like how they're just shoving this stuff in here. Like, it's almost like these are all mini books shoved into one book. So this is like... What is this? Is this like mutant? Is this like X-Men? Spontaneous ignition of supernatural might? Is this like mutant abilities? The X gene? Yes, okay. Yep, it is totally mutants. With some abilities here. Oh, yes, you can acquire them. Interesting. So again, I'm not going to go through all these, but I mean, it looks like a deep, thick book, and it looks like it's got a lot of stuff in here. I can't speak to its power or its balance or its usefulness, but it is a very thick and lengthy book, and I mean, that's a lot of words. Paizo definitely loves their weird shit. I don't think this is my favorite format for a book. This book would be very difficult to find something in. And the fact that all of these feats and spells and abilities are divided into these 6 chapters, which themselves have kind of, nonsensical names, the land of thought and imagination. It's like, wait, was that in cults or was it in secret society? Was that a part of temporal anomalies or was that in the mirror section? Like, the book is not maximized for use at the table, for sure. And that's a problem. But it could also be that, Paizo's reading the room. They're going, nobody's using their books anymore. They're all using Nexus or Path Builder or Nethys or their character sheet on Foundry. And it kind of doesn't matter. People aren't referring to their book anymore. And so we can kind of design the book more strictly as something that is to be read and enjoyed, instead of something that has to be a reference at the table. Super chat from Nightish. Why isn't it called The Darkive? Womp, 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 womp. Well, it's called the Dark Archive. Dark Archive. Dark Archive. I honestly, I mean, by the way, Nightish. Bad joke. Yeah, I'm just saying Darkive. Darkive sounds cooler to me. I don't know. Dark Archive itself. Again, I mean, they're going for like this X-Files vibe with the book, I guess. I don't know. Or the shrinkflation. I paid the $5. I get to have my horrible jokes read. Yeah, I mean, do not love, like, look at this. Look at this page here. Look at this. Not only do you have the border, but then you have this additional fact that it's now on a piece of fake paper in a sheaf of fake paper on a border set itself on a piece of paper. So, like, this is this is unnecessarily cluttered, and this is unnecessarily designed. Like, this is a big problem, you know? So I don't like this design, but I think you're going to see more of this to come, because I think they are just going with the fact that people are just looking up feats on Archives of Nethys or in Path Builder or in a compendium from Foundry, and they're not actually using the books. And so the books are just for people reading in bed or reading on the toilet or something. They're not actually for use at the table, and they don't have to be restricted to that. So, and again, there seems to be a lot going on in the book. I can't say how well balanced any of this is, but I mean, if you're into this weird meta X-Files stuff, then this is probably a good book for you. Yeah. Well, also I don't hate that it threw in, you know, a couple of adventures. I don't hate that. I like that, actually. So show you different ways that it could be done. Yeah, Andrew, I don't know that I don't think that's the way I personally want the book to be written, but I could see where a lot of people do. And, you know, I can tell you that when we're playing our games nowadays, I mean, even people that I would try to yell at for not having things, they're all building their characters on Path Builder. They're dragging their feats on through Foundry VTT. They're not, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know where this feat even is from. Oh, I don't even own that book. I just have that feat though. So they don't even have these things, you know. I think Dark Archives, and I'll say this, I like Book of the Dead. I don't know that I like this book as much as, this book has classes in it, at least. I mean, I agree with that, Damien. I mean, Gods of Magic and all that other stuff. Secrets of Magic. I thought Secrets of Magic, which also had classes in it, was definitely, for me, disappointing. I was not a big fan of a lot of the stuff in that book. I don't dislike these little short mini adventures. I think you can get a lot of play out of that, and like Shadram says, you can showcase some of the things that are added. You know, at least you're very honest about your complete and total selfish bias. Self-confessed cynic. Derek, good name, by the way. This book is pretty much right up my alley. I love things like Delta Green. X-Files is one of my favorite TV shows. This book is great inspiration. 100%. I think you have to put that into the context, too. Now, I don't know how smart it is. If I owned a game company, if Derek owned a game company, if Derek was releasing books, I probably would not be producing books like this. Because my thought is that role-playing games, I should try to sell people things that are as generic and as serial numbers filed off as possible, because I want to empower you to take these tools, to take these spices and classes and feats and interject them and add them into your campaign. Now, that is not the way that Paizo has been doing things. Sure, like, there's okay to have a theme, like, hey, do you want to add you know, more undead into your campaign? Here's a book with undead themed things. But the Paizo books are very, I feel they're very specific. A lot of their things in their games are very, very, very specific about a certain type and a certain type of tone and style. I've heard it said, we ourselves have said it, but I've also heard other people say that they feel like Pathfinder 2 is more connected to Galarian and to the world books that they are releasing than maybe 5th edition is to their books. Like, the 5th edition books are very, you know, technically they're set in the Forgotten Realms, but they might as well not be. They're pretty much completely generic. And I see a bunch of people coming out here. I prefer the Paizo approach. Flavor built into the rule book feels right to me. Hell no, screw generic. If I want generic, I could just use some tropes and use it. This all comes down to your personal preference and taste. I like generic because I'm a creative person who's capable of, I don't want to have to do the extra work of filing all this stuff off anyways, because I don't want to use what they have anyways. I'd rather just, do that. If I want to be inspired, if I do want inspiration, that's when I turn to books like Tome of Adventure Divine, or any of the other numerous Oracle-based games or books or supplements, which are specifically designed to be idea generators. I like to keep my flavor and my idea generators kind of separate from my rules and my mechanics, at least in terms of the book and the approach. And believe it or not, like a game like Dungeon World, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game, is actually very generic in the way that it's approached in that regard, right? So Derek is a creative person, runs Lord of the Rings, Star Wars-like worlds. Cool. Yeah, so overall, I don't know. I think the book's pretty good. I mean, I probably would say I'd give it a B. I don't really like the format of it, but I don't know. I didn't see anything here that was horrible. I think this is a good balance. I mean, I like it a lot more than the Lost Omens book. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to dig into all this stuff. If all of this garbage, if all these feats and all this other stuff is garbage, okay, then it's a C. But if all this stuff in there is good quality and has a lot of value and fun and useful, I don't know. I'd probably give it an A. So I don't know. I think overall, I think the book seems fine. Especially if you're into that weird occult X-Files, type game that, again, the people at Paizo really seem to love. And a kind of, if you replace Mulder and Scully with an investigator and an oracle and a magus, or a thaumaturge and a psychic, like that's a very that you're basically creating the X-Files, except it's called the Dark Archive. The multiple attack penalty is out there, and you go through and you have this thing, and it's like, yeah, you're leaning into the flavor, and you're gonna have fun with that. If you're trying to just take these things as like Derek, you need to read Last Wall and the Pathfinder Society Lost Omens books. You keep blasting the whole line based off of Monsters Myth. Well, newsflash, I have read Last Wall. Thought it was terrible. So. +1 for being timed around Stranger Things. Yeah, of course. Always good. Would probably give the book a B. Yeah, same with me. If it had more special spells, especially divine spells, I'd give it an A. Yeah, divine needs some help. I don't know what they need to do for that. If divine didn't get help from the gods books and the Last Wall books, if it didn't get it yet, it's just not going to get it. They've just given up on it. Again, divine list is shit. There's all these spells and reference abilities that basically like shit on divine casters or shit on divine abilities, and sort of actively make fun of the fact that some people worship deities. I just think Paizo has it out for divine casting. Lack of rituals in Dark Archives. That's a good... I won't ding the book because I wouldn't expect it to. And again, it could be based on their playtest results. But what I am willing to bet Boothby... again, RFC, Steven said... we were talking with Mark, and I was talking about how I like rituals, and Steven from our Roll for Combat said, Mark, I gotta tell you, I've been playing Pathfinder 2 for 3 years. I've never cast a ritual. None of my players have ever cast rituals. And my guess is Paizo, when they're online, when they're reading things on Reddit, or they're reading things on Twitter, or people are talking about feats and combat and flanking, no one's ever talking about rituals. And my guess is people just don't cast them. And so Pathfinder, why waste word space on abilities that people aren't going to use and aren't using in their games? Personally, I would love to shift more of the game to rituals. And, sometimes you have to accept the fact that the game and the people who are playing it are moving in a different direction than you are. Sometimes. And that's, that's okay. That's okay. But I do think that, even Paizo forgot about rituals. I think Paizo's well aware of rituals. I think they just know that people aren't using them. Sounds like a catch-22. I agree. If you put more... But if people aren't using the core game rituals, if I polled a lot of people, Facebook, Reddit, even our own Patreon, and tried to get real honest answers from people, and I said, how long have you been playing Pathfinder 2? How many campaigns have you run? How many times have you run player? How many rituals have you cast in the course of 3 years? And the answer might be 0 a lot of the times. And you might get like, oh, there's this one time where we cast this very specific campaign GM ritual. And I think that when people do cast rituals, they're doing it because it's almost like a cutscene, not because they're like using them tactically. 100% rituals suck. Yeah. Yeah. And because the number is 0. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. All right. There we go. People are answering. Very good. Thank you for being truthful. Nevik says 0. Boothby says 0. And I agree. Rituals are weak. If rituals were stronger, people would use them. But, Ford, a lot of pre-made adventures don't encourage using rituals. Oh, okay. Yeah. You mean they don't encourage them, or they like actively discourage them? We've used one ritual 3 times. Okay, I get what you're saying, Ford. Rituals take too much time. The ritual people would cast is Raise Dead. You mean Resurrect. Raise Dead's a spell, and you don't die ever. Yeah, that's also true. And yeah, we use the Resurrect ritual, and we just hand waved it. Yes, if I said, how many rituals have you cast in your campaign in Pathfinder 2 ever, and then I said, and you don't get to use the Resurrect ritual, I'm sure the number would be 0 for quite a lot of people. Reincarnate. Nice. Well, at least that's fun. So overall, I think the book's good. In one of the APs, one of the NPCs created permanent undead followers. That's a ritual. Well, I'm glad somebody's using them, GM Scott. Derek, I think you're right, but rituals have so much potential to serve as great narrative set pieces. The Exorcist isn't the same film without the use of ritual. Listen, I think there's a ton of spells that are currently in the game which should be removed from the spell slot system and put as rituals. I think that would be way cooler, but I'm not the one in charge over there at Paizo. So people love their spells, man. They love them. And like, especially when you see spells where you go, this spell is very clearly in existence to do this one thing, that almost like it's weird that it's even a spell. Again, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that I am biased, because in this book, Dungeon World, the wizard has, all wizards have an ability that they start the game with called Ritual. And they get it right from the beginning of the game. And what does Ritual do? Well, it says, when you draw on a place of power to create a magical effect, tell the GM what you are trying to achieve. Ritual effects are always possible and always work, but the GM will give you 1 to 4 of the following conditions. It could take days or weeks or months. First, you must blank. You'll need help from blank. It will require a lot of money or other resources. The best you can do is a lesser version, unreliable and limited. You and your allies will risk danger from blank. And lastly, you'll have to disenchant blank to do it. By the way, remember, that's it. It's not even a spell. You can, at first level, you could just go and say, I want to create a ritual. Okay, well, first you have to draw upon a place of power to create a magical effect. So the first thing your party does is they go to the Stonehenge, or they go to the place where the ley lines cross, or they go to some ancient temple where the powerful magical energies of the world bubblesce and coalesce. And then you go, I want to create a ritual effect. What do you want to do? I want to stop the volcano from erupting. I want to lay waste to the enemy's stronghold. I want to free the inhabitants of the curse which has befelled them. I want to unpetrify the entire town which was cursed with being turned to stone. And then the GM goes, okay, well, it's going to take 1 to 4 things. It needs A, B, and C. And the party goes, there's a check. Nope, that's what you need to do. If you do those 3 things, you will achieve your effect. And the party goes, awesome, cool. Well, the first thing is we will need the aid of a Medusa. And it's like, okay. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool. Like, that's a whole separate adventure. We don't have to go kill a Medusa. I mean, the GM could really direct the game. They could say, you will need the assistance of a Medusa in this ritual. Or they could say, you need a fucking Medusa's head, right? You're as a GM, you are getting to really direct how the game is going to go from this perspective. And then they go, okay, we've got step 1. And then the second thing is like, you will need to disenchant a powerful magical relic capable of, healing. And the party's like, okay, well, where are we going to go get this? Where would we even find that thing? And let alone can we borrow it from somebody? Well, they might not like that we disenchant it. Well, maybe we have to steal it then. It literally creates, maybe not a whole campaign, but it might create a whole adventure, and it's all driven by the players, and it's this great conversation between GMs. Now, I'm not talking about Dungeon World specifically or Powered by the Apocalypse. What I'm saying, though, is that one 5-line, not even a full paragraph ability is better at achieving these effects than like 50% of the spells in PF2, and certainly all of the rituals, and in my opinion, is actually exciting and fun and engaging for the characters to do. Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. And again, remember, one of the things could be that it's expensive, but it doesn't say gold, right? It might take rare gems, or it might take the tears of virgins, or it could be darker if you want to go on that respect, right? Like it could require the beating heart of a newborn. I don't know. Like, it's your game, you set the lines, you set the veils, but like you can set the tone of your game. And even as a player, you can sort of negotiate with the GM. Well, I don't think I want to provide that. What if I provide this instead? And the GM goes, yeah, that'll work, but maybe the effect would be a little bit different. And you're like, okay, that sounds cool. All right. And you're kind of negotiating and you're figuring out what the magic does. But most importantly, your wizard or your ritualist or whoever, like you feel like you are this powerful person. But it's not like giving you a bonus in combat. It's not going to make you like fireball, instant kill all the enemies, a bunch of save or die spells, and they're all dead. It's taking the power fantasy of being a wizard and taking it from doing a bunch of damage and making the fighters feel stupid and killing people instantaneously and making everybody else feel worthless. And you're transferring it to a more narrative power fantasy where you are accomplishing these incredible, amazing, miraculous things, and the game is encouraging you and even rewarding you for doing that. All right, I went on a rant there. Sorry. Man, imagine that in Pathfinder. Just embrace the narrative flexibility of other games. Strat says, nah, instead we get multiple pages of ley line rules in Secrets of Magic, which are useless from every perspective. Exactly. But you know what? The folks who released this book never released another. There's no expansion because they said, you got it all. And it's released under Creative Commons. So if you have some thoughts, third party can release something, but honestly, you don't need much anyways. Yeah. See, the ley line rules of Secrets of Magic are a great example of horribleness, Strat. In the 2D20 fantasy game I'm designing, the first question I'm asking is, should this be a spell? It's a good question. My suggestion to rituals shows my PBTA experience. That's why playing multiple systems is great. I agree. Okay. It would be interesting to implement it using arcane primal nature, and a cult could even use the skill feats. I agree, and I also agree. In fact, that's one of the ideas that I have if I ever really wanted to take this towards a Derek Pathfinder 2, would be taking some of those concepts and putting them into skills and unlocking them with skill feats potentially. I'm happy that today my player signed a contract with the devil for bleed damage on his weapon. Lol, even though it costs half healing from medicine. Derek just makes me want to go play Blades in the Dark. So yeah, I mean, again, Pathfinder 2 is fun, because there's meat to the game, and there's, I mean, I hate to say it, but like, there's a video game-ness to it, right? Where you can just build your character, and you can stack your buffs, and you can get a really high number, and you can debuff the enemy, and I'm really good. And then it's like, I don't need to be creative or smart. My character is just so powerful, I just win. That is fun sometimes. I'm not going to lie. That is fun sometimes. But, you know, maybe that's not the only way to play TTRPGs. And there are other ways as well. But again, not saying that one is better than the other, because like, again, sometimes I want to beat the game using the game. And that's fun. And when you want to do that, Pathfinder 2 is really good at that. So your recent spell tier list videos made me think you hated the system. You know, this is a classic mistake, Shark Boss, that people think I hate the games. I do not. The games that I hate are the games I don't talk about. Right? If I don't have something to say about a game, it's because it's completely disinteresting to me, and I don't think that there's anything there. I'm not going to shit on something or troll on something that I don't think has any value. That to me is just like, you know, that's like shooting them while they're down. I beat up, I engage with, I discourse with, I debate with games and mechanics that I think are interesting, but fundamentally flawed. There is no one game that's perfect. If there was, I'd be playing that game and that game exclusively, and that's not what it is, you know. But to quote you too, you know, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So we're always on the search. Damien, I hated PBTA when I joined the Patreon, and Derek gave me a complete 180. Yes, it's very awesome. And I'm hoping with sort of the new revision to the Patreon that we're hoping to do, one of the goals I want to do in Patreon 3.0, Nights of Last Call Patreon, is I want to start running some games for patrons. I'm going to have to limit that probably to the higher tiers, because I can't play games with everybody. But one of the things I really am hoping to do with that is run these games, but not really run them as, you know, we could run them as fun adventures. But I think what they're really more for is demos for people who have interest in a game that I'm very passionate about and I already learned. And they say, well, let me try playing in that game and see how it works and make a decision about whether or not that is a game that I want to continue to pursue an interest in. Or at least to increase my general awareness of that type of game and that type of mechanic. So, and I agree, Strat. PF2 is fun. You know, I think, I'll be honest with you, you know, I think playing a 20 level campaign could be a bit of a slog. I think you can start to, you know, be like, oh my God, how many times am I going to double slice over the course of this entire campaign? But there's a lot of there's a lot of variety, a lot of options. I don't think anyone has figured out, there's probably some classes that are probably too powerful and probably some abilities that are probably too good. But for the most part, I think they did a really great job of balancing the game and making a lot of interesting options without too many feat traps. And the combat is, you know, there's a certain amount of engagement there, and you do have to make decisions. And again, I don't think it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I would have preferred for them to break from PF1. And having talked to Mark on this very stream when Mark was here with Steven from Roll for Combat, and been like, wow, why didn't you guys go with that? I wish they would have taken that leap. But, you know, they're a business. And unfortunately, the realities of the public is not everybody wants to be as crazy as me and to go off the deep end into these new mechanics. They want to stay rooted to the same sort of TTRPG, D&D based gameplay experience that they've had for the last 40 years. That's what 5th edition did after 4th edition. And part of the reason I never got into 5th edition wasn't because I thought it was a bad game. It's because I looked at 5th edition and I was like, oh, kind of looks like 2nd edition D&D, 3rd edition D&D kind of mixed together with a little bit of 4th edition mechanics, but with the serial numbers filed off so it doesn't say 4th edition. And I'm like, okay. But I've played those games before. In fact, I've played 2nd edition and 3rd edition and 4th edition, so I don't need to play that game again. And so a big part of the reason why I disliked it wasn't because it was a bad game. I disliked it because it wasn't a new game, because it wasn't pushing the boundaries and expanding the games. We have PDFs. We have the OGL. I can go play 1st edition D&D, and that book was released in 1979, 77. I can play the white hack of the original box books, which was 1974. So I don't need them to reprint that game. I have that game. It's the internet. Nothing dies. I can go play that game whenever I want. So I don't need them to keep remaking the games. I want something new. Okay. Derek, do you know about any Powered by the Apocalypse game for playing an alien-themed campaign? Alien, like the movie Alien? Powered by the Apocalypse Alien, like specifically horror. I do not, actually. I'm sure there's probably like a house rule for Monster of the Week, which might work for Alien, but specifically like an alien space monster hunting you, I do not know. I do not think so. The feels when Derek never talks about Cyberpunk. That, to be clear, is sort of a genre thing, Nightish. Shadowrun, Cyberpunk 2020, The Sprawl, which is a PBTA game, all Netrunner from Final Fantasy Flight Games. It's all in that cyberpunk genre. It's not my favorite, it's not my favorite genre. So part of it is the mechanics might be amazing. They might be beautiful, but it's not my thing. Shark Boss. GURPS. Where we at? Gotta have it here somewhere. I know I got it here. Oh, here we go. Boom. Steve Jackson, GURPS. Basic set, 3rd edition. Boom, there we go. True story, 1996 was when this was printed. This was my first non-D&D game that I ever played. Was GURPS. Like, this was at my comic book store, and this was my first experience playing something that wasn't exactly Dungeons and Dragons as a role-playing game. Yeah, circa 96. So I was like 14, and I bought this because I wanted to be cool. And my God, GURPS. Generic universal role-playing system, for those of you wondering what that stands for. Let's see. Golden Cat, out of curiosity, what would people's Frankenstein's monster of a perfect TTRPG look like? God only knows. Part of the problem is ultimately what I want a role-playing game to do. I think trying to get it to do everything means that it becomes worse. Typically what ends up happening when I think about these, or when I start going down these processes, is I start trying to create mechanics that will satisfy all of my gaming urges. And I do, but I end up with a game that is unplayable at the table. It ends up with too many rules, too many switches, too many dials, too many levers. And one of the biggest problems I have is looking at a mechanic or seeing a situation or seeing something in the game and going, I want to model that. I want to model that using mechanics, or I want to encourage this kind of gameplay experience. I want to put that into the game, or I want to encourage through mechanics this type of narrative flow, and I want to put that into a mechanic. And what ends up happening is the mechanics, and it all works. It's just a mess at the table. And the reality is, getting it to the table, playing it, just having the mind space to keep it all flowing is too much. And some of my favorite games that I love playing are guilty of this. Pathfinder 2 could even potentially be guilty of this at times, where there's just too many moving parts. There's too many things on your character sheet. And there's too many choices, and you're level 18, and you've got 20 some feats on your character sheet, and you've got 30 some prepared spells a day, and you've got 12 magical items invested, and you've got a staff, and you've got scrolls, and you've got wands, and you've got miscellaneous abilities, and you got skill feats and ancestry feats, general feats, and you're just like, you're like, your head's gonna explode. And it's cool that all those things exist, but at the moment of actually playing the game, you're kind of like, I'm drowning underneath the weight of what they've given to me. Gold Cat, that sounds awesome. Like I have also gone down that route as well. Root demo. Joe, playing different or obscure systems is my favorite thing about Gen Con. Joe, 100%, or John, sorry, John, 100%. In fact, one of the things that I basically spent most of my time doing at Gen Con, if it wasn't playing Magic the Gathering, was going to Indie Games on Demand, IGOD, and Indie Games on Demand basically is where I was introduced to almost all of these games. And I used to go there, and I used to spend at least probably 4 to 5 to 6 slots Gen Con at Indie Games on Demand, running them, running slots or playing in them. It's how I was exposed to like all these games back 10 plus years ago. And fantastic. Very disappointed, very sad that we're not going this year. Again, we tried to. I have my badges in the other room, $150 down the drain. We were going to go in 20. We had badges and hotels in 2020, but of course, it got completely canceled because of COVID. And then we had badge, and then we pushed it to the next year, 2021, and we got to defer it. And then we deferred it to 2021, and COVID was still a threat. And we heard that everybody had pulled out, Fantasy Flight Games and stuff like that. And so we didn't go in 2021, even though we had a hotel. And when I say we had a hotel, I mean like within proximity to the convention center. But we didn't go in 2021 because we heard that everybody had pulled out. And I ended up hearing that there weren't a lot of people there, which honestly to me is actually kind of sweet, because Gen Con has also gotten way too popular. When I first went, when the first Gen Con I went to was the last year Gen Con was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then I flew to Milwaukee, and then every year since then, we've made the drive to Indianapolis. So since 2003, it's been in Indianapolis. We've gone every year, and it's been incredible, and it's been amazing. And it was like 20,000 people, and now it was like, in 2019, it was like 50,000. Way too many people. Way too many people. And so we were going to go this year. COVID seemed like it was in a good place, although I'm a little concerned now about other things that are popping up. But we couldn't get a damn hotel room. And I wasn't going to spend $1,000 a night to get some Airbnb in downtown Indy. And so ultimately, we're not going this year. So unfortunately, we went to Origins, which was kind of a bust. There weren't a lot of people there, like nothing there for Pathfinder 2, very little, even for 5th edition D&D. And what was there was just for 5th edition D&D. It was very disappointing. It was cool. I got to hang out with a bunch of patrons. That was actually the best part of going to Origins, was hanging out with some of the patrons like GM Scott and Reverse Slalom and One Hot Llama and Andy to the Pain. And that was a lot of fun. Ray Sean, thanks for the support, man. I hope you can too. That'd be a lot of fun to see you in there, buddy. Yeah. So 2 years to 6th edition. Yeah, they're not going to call it 6th edition. I think I'm either going to be really disappointed or really happy with 6th edition. We'll see what happens. Derek, what are the odds of you releasing a Powered by the Apocalypse with the Knights? Well, Ford, 100%. We are starting a Powered by the Apocalypse game this month with the Knights. We are going to be playing Root, the tabletop role-playing game, Root, which uses the Powered by Apocalypse engine. Well, it's not actually an engine. Powered by the Apocalypse is not an engine. It's a philosophy of games. But we are going to be using Root to play a Root game. It's going to be live, and it's also going to be in person. So we are not going to be playing over Foundry. We're actually going to be playing at our studio. The Knights of Last Call actually own, I guess we don't own it, but we have a studio space that we rent. We just haven't been there in many months because we've just been doing everything online. It's just been a lot easier. It made a lot more sense when we were, when COVID was a thing. But we're going to get back into the studio, and we're going to try to do our game in person, recapture some of that fun energy you get when you're in the same room as somebody. And also, Root doesn't require the same amount of Powered by the Apocalypse games in general, don't require the same amount of tactical miniature grid-based movement, which is kind of a pain in the ass when you're playing at a table, but you're also trying to record things with cameras because the cameras kind of get in the way, and then you got people's arms sticking into the camera, and it can be kind of annoying. So yeah, 100%. You got a good chunk of GURPS. Damn. I think I might own another book, but I think I only have the one GURPS book. So, I'm of the belief that there isn't a one of the decisions I came to a long time ago was I just needed to play multiple games every month. Ben from our Patreon, everyone knows Ben. Ben does this, and it's awesome. But it's my nature to become very obsessive over one RPG and to really want to pour all my energies and efforts into that RPG. And I hate to say this, but if I was playing 3 different RPGs, let's say I was playing Pathfinder 2 to sort of get that really gamey, mechanical, sort of combat-esque sport, kind of competitive, kind of adversarial GM game, kind of on the maybe a little bit on the rails, a little bit just sort of like, hey, we're having fun, we're being badasses, we're kicking ass. Cool, I got that game, that's scratching that itch. And then I go and play a Legend of the Five Rings game, a very serious samurai drama about these characters with, clinging to this code of honor while at the same time facing the very real political realities of a very dangerous and deadly world, being asked to choose between the love of the man who loves them and the lord who has commanded them to move against their lover's lord and army. Like, that's really intense and that's really dramatic. And then over here, I might have a game where we're playing, Powered by the Apocalypse, anthropomorphic animals in Root. Awesome. It's going to scratch all these itches that I want. The problem is, for whatever reason, one of them is going to become my favorite. And I'm going to be sitting there going oh man, why am I not playing Legend of the Five Rings right now? Or why am I not playing Pathfinder 2 right now? That game, that group where we're at, that is that's where I want to be right now. And so it can be frustrating. Anyways. Let's see. What the hell is Derek talking about now? Shut up! You went to Gen Con in 2021. It was not great. There was hardly any TTRPG representation there. It was cool playing some new board games. Interesting. We started going to Gen Con in 88, but we stopped going shortly after we went to Indy. Too crowded, too expensive. Definitely too expensive. Too many people. Am I gatekeeping again? It's not even an issue of gatekeeping. If I was gatekeeping, and I could be a little bit, I would say gaming has become much more democratized. There's a lot of people going there, and now they're bringing their family. They're bringing their spouse. They're bringing their 3 kids. And the spouse and the 3 kids, they don't care about gaming, but they're taking up space. They're taking up aisle space. They're taking up air. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is just, the game convention got bigger, but there's still only one Paizo booth. If Jason Bullman's there, there's still only one Jason Bullman. There's still only one Fantasy Flight Games booth. So all these people now have to fit into one booth. There was one Fantasy Flight Games booth when there was 20,000 people, and there's one Fantasy Flight Games booth when there's 50,000 people. That hasn't changed, and that sucks. Hachukin, we should run Northern Reaches at Origins next year. No, you're not thinking fourth dimensionally, Hachukin. We should run Northern Reaches at NightCon next year. That's great. You got to think about it. Oh, the safe house is great. We did eat the safe house. The safe house was awesome. 100%. That was incredible. I actually ate there twice. I also went to a couple Magic the Gathering tournaments in Milwaukee, and I ate there once a second time. Yes, the safe house is great. That was like a classic old school Gen Con experience. Like and I'd read about it for years, and I was like, I have to go to the safe house when we went to Gen Con for that. The last time it was in Milwaukee, which was, fun. So yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's actually awesome. Oh yeah, early Gen Con, I've got some great stories. Cypher's a great system as well. I kickstarted Numenera back in 14 when Monty Cook did it. It's like crazy that like Numenera and the Cypher engine is like almost as old as 5th edition D&D. But Aaron's had my book for a while, but I have his Conan 2D20 book. So I haven't gotten any of the new Cypher material, but I mean, that group of people, Monty Cook and like Bruce Cordell and Sean K. Reynolds, are like some of my favorite game designers and adventure writers of all time. So like the combination of Monty Cook, Sean K. Reynolds, and Bruce Cordell, Bruce R. Cordell, are just like triple A pluses in my book. So really love them. So, I'm ADHD enough to enjoy several TTRPGs, running 2 PF2 games, a Root game, and I'm a player in a Starfinder game. Wow, that's pretty great. Well, good for you. I'm struggling right now, and then I'm trying to run games, but don't have consistent players. That can be a problem. I mean, it's tough. You got, there's a social aspect to these games. You got to find the right people, and it's just interest. That's just the nature of the beast. Part of that is solved with the Knights of Last Call, because at least it's a community of very dedicated people. We do have a cost to get in, and I know that sounds kind of cheesy and shitty, but like the barrier to entry kind of keeps some people out that like might just be in there to troll or not really care. It's like you have a reputation that you want to preserve, and so no one wants to like act like an idiot because you're going to get socially consequence, and you don't want to just completely shit on it because you paid money to be there. So it kind of helps self-regulate that a little bit. Chris, never played it except to Gen Con. Numenera, Cypher engine. I've never actually run a game like in my home game. But I feel like that could be true as well. I feel like it could break down with fantasy. I do feel like that. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you too, Gold to Cat. Like, I really would love to, there's a lot of RPGs I want to play, and I know there's a lot of people on the Patreon who would love to play them and would be willing to pay to play them, and that's great. But like the idea of spending more time at my computer is like, which is like one of the reasons why I really do want to like somehow figure out a way to do like a night con and have just a bunch of people come in and we can just play in person. I love playing in person. I think it's great. I understand that it's really great for a lot of people, but because they have traveling and they have they have anxiety issues, social anxiety issues, or it's just difficult for them to maybe get to a real game. But boy, I nothing for me beats playing in person. I just love it. I love that energy, and I love to participate in that. So that's great. I wouldn't call Numenera fantasy, Damien. It's weird fantasy. It's weird fantasy. Lance, I don't think anyone's still going. I'm not going. Tim's not going. Are you going? Because that would be one person. To Gen Con, that is. You should let me run a Fate game for y'all. Well, John, if you join the Knights of Last Call Patreon, we have a community server. We have a variety of Foundry servers and Forge servers, which we run so that we can host our various Foundry licenses. I think we're up to like 12 Foundry licenses now that we have bought. So like we've spent close to 6, well, plus the Forge license. We have 2 Forge servers, actually. We have one for Northern Reaches, and we have one just for the community games. So I think we've spent close to $1,000 just on virtual tabletop environments so that our patrons have a place to play. So go figure that. So running community games is a great way to get hero points and win prizes and win rewards. And obviously, also, we have a lot of people who are interested in that stuff. So, a cool Patreon goal 44 years from now. I've got Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark, Iron Sworn, Starforge, PF2E, all of which would be to run for mates, but alas life. Yes, that's true. Oh, yeah, the stream is still up. Yeah, well, I don't got work tomorrow, Lance. I'm on break. I'm on vacation the whole week. I've got a flight tomorrow to Vegas, tomorrow night. So I'll be in Vegas Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that means no Thursday stream this week. So level 10, all spells rated, which I said in last time, will not be August 5th. It'll be August 12th. So, oh, all right. Anthony understood what Lance meant. So, does Fate even need a grid? No. In fact, my favorite way to play Fate is either full theater of the mind, or I actually like to just use index cards, and that's a zone, and then you can write the aspects of that zone, maybe like 2 or 3 bullet points, and then those aspects become part of that zone, and you can have people either just put a marker or a little mini on the zone, and then they can move from zone to zone. But then anybody who's in that zone can spend fate points to tag aspects that are in that zone. Or the GM can compel people with fate points triggering off of the aspects that you have tied to that zone. Like a zone could be, on fire. A zone could be cluttered. A zone could have full of caustic chemicals. A zone could be pool of magma, noxious toxic gases, stalagmites and stalactites everywhere. Like those could be the 3 aspects to this cavern zone. And then anybody who's in that zone, they can either tag those aspects, or a GM could use them to compel to create difficulty and add to the narration of the game. So what I just described is like basically the best part of Fate, in my personal opinion. Let's see. In Vegas, scouting venues for NightCon. Full disclosure, I would love to do NightCon in Vegas. Number one, it's fairly easy to fly to. Midwest flights and East Coast flights to Vegas are fairly cheap, and West Coast flights to Vegas are even cheaper. You can have it on the East Coast, but then it's really difficult for the West Coast people to get there sometimes. Second, it's designed to support a large amount of people. So, and also third, it's America's Playground, so it's pretty great. So let's see here. I hate having elf have mechanical number of benefits in general. Doesn't bother me. There, I agree to disagree. I like ancestries to actually have a lot of mechanical crunch to them, because I want ancestries to feel very different from one another. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have like +2 to a stat. I do think that that's boring. But I do like having mechanical differences. Like when you played 4th edition and an Eladrin, which was it envisioned elves as like, there was like these sort of magical fae-like elves, and then there was sort of more of the like, wild living in the woods elves. Like the Eladrin, which were the sort of high elves, the high magic elves. At level 1, I mean, like from the beginning of the game, their racial power was as an encounter power, which means they could do it every 5 minutes, basically once a fight. They could teleport. You can just teleport. You know how awesome that was? And it was so cool, and they felt so different. And like whether you were an Eladrin wizard and you could like teleport away from an approaching enemy, or you were an Eladrin fighter and you could teleport past the front defensive line to the back ranks of an enemy squadron, either way, it was awesome. And it was like, oh yeah, that person's an Eladrin, and we aren't forgetting it. I mean, full honesty, when you're playing with your friends around the table, whether it's in person or on VTT, how often do you even forget what ancestry they are? Oh, that person's a bird person. I completely forgot. I played with my buddy George, who's in the chat here, Lance. He was a Tengu for, a number of sessions and levels. I completely forgot all the time that he was a Tengu. all the time. Just forgot. Because it's just easy to, just ignore. Canada to Vegas is easy and cheap as well. Nice. Weekend hotel rates are pricey. GM Scott, sometimes you can work out a hotel deal though, and that if you get enough people, if you get enough volume, and that could be really great too. Hey, Anonymous, thanks for the tip.
$5. How much does it cost to hire the Knights of Last Call to do a playtest? Asking for a friend.
Well, that's a great question. I do not know. I think it really comes down to whether or not we think it would be something that we could, use for the channel or whatever like that. But if somebody wanted us to take a look at their game and give us, an honest professional opinion, I imagine it would probably cost, somewhere, and especially if you wanted it to be like advertised for marketing, probably a couple $100. If it's just us reviewing the documentation and stuff like that, not playing it on a stream or something, that's probably a lot cheaper. Yeah, sure. You went to Vegas to play D&D. D&D in Vegas feels like going to a brothel to play Scrabble. Listen, one of my lifetime goals, they have these, by the way, they have board game cruises, where, it's not the whole cruise. Cruise ships are 1,000+ people, 2,000+ people, but they have board game or cruises where there'll be a group that organizes 50 or 100 people to go on there, and they're bringing their board games, and they sit around, they play board games. You get the free drink package, and you can go explore and break it up a little bit. I love drafting in Magic the Gathering. I like the team draft, which is 3v3. And one of my dreams is to get 5 of my buddies together who love drafting. We go on a cruise. We bring like 20 boxes of sealed product with us, and we just team draft, drink, team draft, eat, team draft, take a show, team draft on a cruise ship. And you're just team drafting on a cruise ship. It'd be perfect. It'd be beautiful. Yes, well, they did have a storm last week, but we're actually checking on that, and there was some flooding. There was some flooding from the storms last week, but they actually it's Vegas. They got that stuff together real quick. Man, 4E ancestries are such a good way of making ancestry for a 4E style game. Yes, they are, Strat. Yes, they are. Why do you think that Paizo discontinued the pawn line? I couldn't even begin to tell you. It seems like free money. The art is already done. All they're doing is put it on cardboard and sell it to you for $25. If I had to guess, people are playing online and they're not buying the pawns anymore. The people that maybe really were into pawns, they either have turned to minis or 3D printing for their home games. But I'm going to be willing to bet that it's probably VTTs. But I got to imagine it's such a high margin product for them that, it just didn't, yeah. I don't know. Eladrin made it into 5E. Oh, okay. I did not know that. Although their face step was recently changed from once per short rest to proficiency bonus per long rest. So this is something that I know Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft talked about, is he was like, because he's always been saying, I think the short rest is stupid and I want to get rid of it, and I think that it ruins the tension of the game and yada, yada, yada. And he was saying that the recent changes of eliminating things per short rest and instead moving to proficiency bonus per long rest is an indication of that. Ironically enough, proficiency bonus per long rest feels very much more like 3rd edition, whereas once per short rest, even though short rest in 5th edition is 1 hour, whereas in 4th edition, it was essentially, as soon as the combat ended, you had a short rest. Like, if you really needed to know, they called it like about 5 minutes. But the long and the short of it was, when the fight was over, your encounter powers, your per short rest abilities came back. So obviously in 5th edition, it was 1 hour, which to me was always a weird amount of time anyways. But it's an example of where to me, it feels like the game is going backwards, but I digress. If you go to Vegas enough and stay at the same place enough, hotel is often free, lol. For example, John, we are going to Vegas. I am leaving tomorrow night. We are staying at the Bellagio with a pool's fountainside view, and the room is free. I mean, technically it's free. So yeah. Exactly. You won't be playing D&D the whole time. Still plenty of time for debauchery. Also, to be clear, when I go to Vegas, I'm really there. Like, for example, we're going to Vegas. I'm going to go see America's Got Talent get filmed. I'm going to go see the Jabberwockies dance crew. I'm going to go see the new Cirque du Soleil show, Rotten Apple. If I could squeeze it in, I really want to see Katy Perry. I'm a little worried about monkeypox and being in a concert venue like that, but I really want to see Katy Perry. And then we're also going to go to like a couple of great seafood and steakhouses, restaurants. We usually do something nice for dinner. We do something kind of not as nice for lunch. And then I'm going to gamble, you know? I don't really go like for like, I've honestly only been to a strip club in Vegas like twice. Not my favorite experience. It's expensive and it's all a hook job, and they just try to like run up a room and get you to buy bottles, and it's not my luck. Listen, GM Scott, while that would be regrettable, I mean, being on a cruise playing Catan, I could think of about a million things that are worse than that. So, bring 2 or 3 good cubes that last longer and cost more. All right, fair. There's something about opening packs, though, Strat. There's something about opening Strat. Did I get through the whole book? No, I did not. Did you ever see the Ka show in Vegas? It's awesome. I've seen it twice, and it is awesome. I've seen it twice. It is awesome. I love it.
Lazarus Dark tipped $5.
Hey. All right, Lazarus Dark tipped $5. Nothing to say. Love to see it. Thanks, Laz. Glad to see the support. Love it. Derek rocking out to Katy Perry. I did not expect that. You look like something that would go see Genesis. While I would not go see Genesis, I do like Genesis. I like Phil Collins. Those albums. But Katy Perry, rocking out to Katy Perry. Hell yeah, I love Katy Perry. She's very catchy. She's very gorgeous. That doesn't hurt. Obviously, she's incredibly beautiful but very independent from her musical stylings. I also think she's very gorgeous. Yeah. So, anyways, 10:30. Wow, this went long, but thank you everybody for hanging out with us tonight. For those of you who might be here late or waited to the very end, long story short, Psychic I think is interesting. I don't think it's going to be as powerful as your main casters. I think that it feels a little bit pigeonholed into casting those same cantrips over and over again, but it's got a strong theme and a very an interesting approach. And I like some of the gamist mechanics, which a lot of Pathfinder 2 players are playing. Pathfinder 2 is a very gamist game, not a very simulationist game, but a gamist game. And I am encouraged, even if people might be upset, because it upset people from 4th edition for being a very gamey mechanic. Things like Unleash Psyche, for example, only being done in encounter mode. Overall, I give the class a B. And I could see if you're playing a campaign where you're not taking a lot of long rests or long recoveries, where you're going 5 or 6 or even more encounters in a given adventuring workday, then I think the Psychic could even be an A tier class, outshining some of those other classes that really rely on their spell slots and that could be running low by the time you get to a 4th or 5th encounter. So awesome there. Thaumaturge, solid A. Could be S. I think I like the design of the class. Again, I like the way that the implements scale. It is a martial class that has a lot of options to be more than just a combative focused creature. Something I think the barbarian and the fighter, even the ranger, and even dare I say the champion, all I think fail at. I think the Thaumaturge does a much better job at. And I personally would much rather play a Thaumaturge, quite frankly, probably even a rogue, than any of those other classes, just because I like to do things other than just fight. And if your game has a lot of that stuff going on, I think you can have a lot of fun with that. And the feats of the Thaumaturge let you really diversify. I'm going to give it an A. It could be an S. Time will tell. And if you played it right with the right group and the right build, it probably is an S. but I'm going to say that. Overall, the book seemed like a B to me. Fun classes, tight theme, layout was kind of all over the place, a little hard to find things. The sort of 6 mini books in one, didn't like it, but might make it a more enjoyable read when they assume that everybody's just getting all of these informations and feats off of Foundry compendiums or off of Archives of Nethys. So, John, I don't recognize your name, so I don't want to assume that you've not been to these before, but if you had been a regular member of our channel, and certainly if you're thinking like that, you're an ideal candidate for the Discord, because we talk about this all the time, about how archetypes, in fact, I think just in our last stream, we talked about, it was yesterday in our Patreon exclusive stream, I think somebody asked a question, what classes should just be archetypes? And like, I was like, half of them could just be archetypes. And I think even more so. And I think that they should definitely lean into that system, not just from archetype, not just here's a class and it's an archetype. I mean, like the classes that are level 2 dedication, classes that are like level 6 dedications, even classes that are like level 10 or 12 minimum dedication, to sort of have kind of a prestige class-esque feel into the game. And then have your base classes be much more simple and be like, this is the warrior class, this is the spell casting class, this is the sneaky skill class, this is, and then anything that you want to do to change that up, you just do through archetypes. And I mean, free archetype is very popular for a reason. It's because people, it really resonated with the way people played. So yeah, so John, awesome. Glad to hear it. Hopefully you enjoy it. We've got a couple different tiers. $3 is the minimum. That basically just gets you into the Discord. But if you want to have access to extra videos, extra content, extra live streams, our Northern Reaches game, you're going to want to look at Knight or Champion, or if you want to go all the way to the top, to Hero. So, yes, Matt Edwards. I like the way that Kevin Crawford did classes in his SWN and WWN. I think obviously it's an OSRS style game, so it's a little different, but fundamentally, I like that approach. I do like that approach. So where is my Worlds Without Number game? I need to organize this stuff. It's up there somewhere, but yeah, it's a good book. I mean, it's worth buying just for the world creation stuff. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be on break for one whole week. We'll see you next Tuesday. That's the 9th. Remember, our Quest for the Frozen Flame game is still on hiatus because we're all on vacation and some people are out of the country, and we're just kind of taking a break here. August, kids are going back to school. You get the whole jazz. I'm going to enjoy my time in Vegas, and I'm going to be coming back rejuvenated and hopefully not down too much money. Although last time I went, I made money, so here's hoping. But yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll see you either next time, or we'll see you on the Discord through our Patreon. But either way, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you next time on the Knights of Last Call.
need you more.